Story 1. My brother wanted me to be the legal guardian of his baby, so I demanded his wife take a paternity test before I'd be their baby's guardian. Now their marriage is ending. I, 28F, have an older brother, 30M, and around 2 weeks ago he asked me to be the legal guardian of his son. His son is just 6 months old. My brother visited me 2 weeks ago and told me that he and his wife wanted me to be his legal guardian because his job required him to move to another city, and his wife, 29F, spends most of her time in the hospital for her chemo treatments. My brother can't reject this offer to stay back here because it pays more than his current job, and he desperately needs money to pay for his wife's treatments, as she was diagnosed with stage 2 liver cancer last month. So he worked out an arrangement with his in-laws where they'll be the ones looking after his wife while he works out of state for 5 days and comes back on the weekends. But they're also kind of aged and won't be able to handle taking care of both his wife and his son. So he wanted me to take over the duties of his son. We have no other family apart from each other, so I'm the only person he could turn to, which is why it was really difficult for me to say no at all. Both our parents passed away when we were in our early 20s, and we've been on our own ever since. My brother works in marketing and I'm a high school teacher, so it's not exactly like we're rich, and I'm too busy and tired to take on any additional responsibilities like looking after my nephew. I also couldn't just say no to my brother because we're all we have, and it would break my heart if he got mad at me over this. There was also another reason that I was kind of skeptical to agree to this legal guardianship, and that was because of all the rumors and gossip I'd heard about my sister-in-law. We live in a relatively small town, and news travels fast. So a couple of years back, I think before my brother even got married, I heard from one of my coworkers that one of her cousins had gotten into a lot of legal trouble over a paternity fraud that she'd pulled off and was now being sued by her husband, whom she'd been fooling. And even though people weren't really sure of it, there was one name that kept popping up when they were gossiping about this, and that was my present sister-in-law's name. I'm really not sure how exactly she was involved or to what extent, but I did know that she was involved somehow and she'd helped them cover it up for a few years after their child was born. Their son was almost 2 years old when that guy's wife, my sister-in-law's best friend, insisted that they get married so she could quit her job and live at home with her son. His mother suspected that something was off because of how hard she was pushing her decision, and that's how the paternity test finally happened. We also learned that apparently my now sister-in-law had played a huge role in this fraud by putting her best friend in touch with her cousin who worked at the hospital and would periodically take money from her best friend and her unsuspecting husband to make sure this was all kept under wraps. So essentially, she and her best friend were fooling the poor guy for money, and while her best friend got into legal trouble for it, she walked away scot-free almost 2 years ago. My brother told me that he'd met a woman, and it happened to be the same woman whom I'd heard about in this paternity scam gossip. I told him about it back then and warned him, but he was dead sure that she had nothing to do with it, and he trusted her, not the rumors and gossip he heard about her. I didn't know what to say to him, so I didn't interfere, and so, within a year they got married and had a baby. I didn't say anything then because I didn't want to disturb their perfectly happy marriage. And then last month she was diagnosed with stage 2 liver cancer, which is why she's been in and out of the hospital for some time now. I haven't said anything about what I heard from my friends back then, but when my brother said that they wanted me to be their son's legal guardian, I decided that I didn't want to get caught up in anything right now, and so I told him that I'd only agree to the legal guardianship because he didn't like the implications of what I was saying and said that I was needlessly doubting his wife even though they'd been together for so many years now. But I stuck by what I said and told him that I wasn't going to be his son's legal guardian if he didn't get the paternity test done first because I really didn't want any unnecessary trouble in case there really was something that she was hiding still. So after a lot of arguing, he finally gave in and told me that he'd get it done. Then I didn't hear from him for 2 whole weeks, but all of a sudden 3 days back he called me and told me that I no longer needed to sign anything and that he was staying here. I was confused because he just canceled the move out of the blue, so I asked him what changed, and he told me to mind my own business and then hung up on me. That really threw me off because my brother was a generally nice and polite person, so I had absolutely no idea what changed in these past few days. I couldn't even ask anyone else because the only person who was likely to know what was going on with him was his wife, and I didn't want to speak to her. So I waited for a day for my brother to come around on his own and tell me what was going on. But he didn't. So I did what I had to and called up my sister-in-law instead. She answered as soon as I called, and when she did, She didn't waste a second before she started screaming at me and accused me of ruining her marriage. I don't know why she said any of that, but one thing's for sure. Something awful has happened, and I'm afraid that it has to do with a paternity test. I'd only been hellbent on my brother getting the test done because I wanted to buy myself some time to think about what I wanted to do about the guardianship. And also I didn't want to invite trouble just in case he wasn't really the parent. But I'm guessing that there was something that his wife had been hiding, and my insistence on the paternity test must have opened some kind of can of worms because otherwise I couldn't think of a single reason why my brother would make such a decision. I feel awful because just for my own selfishness I've potentially ruined my brother's marriage. And it doesn't help that his wife is suffering from cancer as well. I'd insisted that my brother get a paternity test done before I agree to be the legal guardian of his baby. Update 1. Thank you for all the kind messages and comments. I'm glad to know that not everyone's judging me for wanting to put myself before anyone else. I spoke to my brother today, and he told me everything that had happened in the past 2 weeks. After I asked him to get the paternity test done, he told me that after he met with me he went straight home and told his wife what I'd asked for. He'd assumed it would be a pretty straightforward conversation since he didn't think his wife would disagree, but she was very much against it and it didn't make sense to him. She said that it was insulting that I wanted him to get a paternity test done because that just meant that I still believed she was a scammer, and even worse, she'd been scamming her own husband. So she was against the whole idea of the paternity test and wanted him to look for alternatives. But her reaction to the suggestion of getting a paternity test done was so overly emotional that even he began to suspect that something was off about her behavior. And after a few days of wondering what to do, he finally gave in and decided to get the paternity test done without telling his wife about it. He didn't know what to expect but was secretly hoping that he wouldn't find out anything that he didn't want to. Unfortunately, I think everyone knows by now what he must have found out. My brother and his son weren't a match. He was so shocked by the results the first time that he got the test done a second time just to make sure that there had been no mistakes, and even the second time around the result remained the same. He was in shock about what he'd found out since this meant that his marriage was a lie, but he had no idea how to confront his wife. He'd never paid any heed to the rumors he'd heard about her, not even when I'd warned him, but now, as it turns out, everyone else had been right, and he'd been the one who was dead wrong about his wife. A few days after he got the results, he decided to finally confront his wife. At first she tried to deny it, but there was no running away from the truth anymore when he knew for a fact that he's not the father of the son he'd been raising for so long. After a while she finally confessed to him that a while ago, when they'd just gotten married, she'd had an affair with one of her friends when he happened to be out of town, and that's how she got pregnant. She never came clean about it either because she felt like that was going to ruin their marriage for good. And once she got pregnant she knew that she didn't want to be with anyone else apart from my brother. My sister-in-law also spilled the beans on the first paternity scam she pulled off by revealing that she'd been the one who put her best friend in touch with her cousin who used to work at the hospital back then. And her friend's husband never would have found out either if he hadn't gotten another paternity test done independently from a different hospital. So whatever people had been saying about her was true. I can't believe that, in spite of knowing the consequences of cheating and lying, she still went through and put my brother through the same thing. It's unbelievable and disgusting to say the least. And now I'm really glad that I pressured my brother into getting a paternity test done, or else he might not have been able to find out about any of this. She didn't have a job when she married my brother, and after she got married she decided that she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So it had been my brother who'd been supporting her every step of the way. So it wasn't the fact that she was finally sure of him that made her stay with him and pick her marriage over affairs, but the fact that she literally didn't have anyone else to go to once she got pregnant. My brother thinks that that's the real reason he stayed, and I agree with him. If she could cheat on him 1 year into their marriage, then she didn't really love him, and the only thing that made her stay with my brother was the fact that he was willing to look past her history, trust her implicitly, and provide for her without questioning her. She only cared about herself, and while my brother is still struggling to come to terms with that, I'm not. I'd always known that my sister-in-law wasn't the most trustworthy person but had kept it all to myself since I didn't want to stir up any unnecessary trouble in my brother's life, and he seemed to be really in love with her. And the fact that they were pregnant within a year of their marriage, I couldn't say anything that could potentially mess up their marriage when they were about to have a child together. And once my nephew was born, there was no way I was going to talk crap about my sister-in-law because that would inevitably end up with me and my brother never speaking again, so I stayed silent. But the truth was bound to come out someday. I just regret that I wasn't the one to stop this from happening. My brother has filed for divorce and full custody of his son. His wife is devastated and insists that she really does love him now, but there's no taking back what she did. I, for one, am happy that he's made the decision to leave, even if it is after so many years. The only thing I feel a little bad about is that she's a cancer patient, and this is coming at a really bad time for her. But my brother deserves better, and I'll stand by that. Update 2. I just found out from my brother that the friend that she cheated on him with and his son's real father had still been actively involved in their lives up until recently. He'd come over for a few drinks in the evening today and was venting to me when he told me about this spectacular bit of information. This man had been an old friend of his wife's, and he'd had feelings for her since forever, but then my sister-in-law had chosen to marry my brother because she felt that this friend of hers wasn't stable financially, which just meant that he was well off enough for her. She told him about this friend of hers long back when they started dating initially, but he'd never suspected a thing because that's how much he trusted her. When she told him the truth, she claimed that they'd been together only once after their marriage just because they were drunk and emotional, but he didn't know if anything she said was true anymore. My brother said that he'd been an idiot to trust her in the first place and regrets spending so many years of his life fighting against anyone who said a word against her because eventually it all turned out to be true, and she was nothing more than someone who was after whatever little money he had, and he was the only guy foolish enough to trust her despite her reputation. I felt like crap about myself after he left because if I just pushed him a little harder and forced him not to marry this woman, then maybe he wouldn't be in this awful situation at all. But here we are. It's disgusting that she even remained in touch with the man she cheated on her husband with. Listening to him talk about how his wife would often invite this guy and his wife over for dinner and they'd all sit and chat like old friends while he raised this other man's son was sickening, and I just had to listen to him. But this was his reality. I really can't imagine what my brother must be going through right now, and I just keep thinking about how different things would have been if I tried to force him to see her reality before he got married to her. It sucks that he's having to go through all of this just because he chose to love someone who didn't deserve any of it. I don't even know what will become of his relationship with his son now because this is all bound to take a toll on him. Mainly, he's been living at home with his son, and his wife has moved in with her parents, but she keeps visiting every day to ask for forgiveness and convince him not to leave her. It must be crazy difficult for him to say no to a literal cancer patient after so many years of togetherness. I know he still loves her despite what she did to him and all the lies she told him throughout their marriage and her pregnancy, and I could hear it in the way he was reminiscing today about the good times he'd had with his wife. I wish I could do something to help my brother, but I can't. My hands are tied. The most I can do for him is to offer to babysit my nephew because he's taking up more work and responsibilities in his workplace, so that he earns more than whatever he's making now and can give his son the life he deserves. I don't think he'll get full custody of his son given the circumstances. I bet the court will want to let their kid spend as much time as he can with his mother. If something unfortunate happens to her, it's unlikely that she'll be able to fight the cancer longer than she already has. And as far as I know, her condition has been steadily worsening for the past few months. To be honest, at this point I don't even know what to feel about anyone involved in this situation, including myself. I tried my best to warn my brother back when he was dating my sis, but he didn't listen, so it's not like I'm in the wrong here either. But I also can't just shake off the guilt. All I can say for sure is that every single adult involved here has failed my nephew and made a complete mess of things, including me. I just hope we're all able to come out of this as better people now. Update 3. It's been a week and a half since my brother last visited, and he's been really caught up with work. He dropped by today and requested me to watch my nephew for a couple of hours as he had to go visit his lawyer urgently, and I agreed because this was the least that I could do for him when he was in such a state. Once he came back, he told me that his wife had told her friend, the real father, about who the real father of her son was, and he's willing to fight for custody as well if my brother doesn't agree to his wife's terms. He told me that she's still willing to patch things up with him and even tried to play the cancer card by saying that she wouldn't even be around for much longer probably. So he should just let her spend the last few months of her life peacefully instead of being so selfish and disrupting it all with legal complications. She doesn't even understand that the custody battle isn't a way to get back at her but is just to ensure that even if she does pass away, Her so-called friend isn't able to just swoop in and take his child away from him just because he's his biological father. Only a truly selfish human being would imagine that this is all about them. The only thing that my brother is doing to get back at her, as she says, is the divorce, and that's just because he respects himself too much to spend any more time with someone who has done nothing but use him for these past couple of years. They had a really bad argument about the same a couple of days ago when she dropped by to see her son and talk to him yet again so that she could persuade him to stop the legal proceedings. When he told her that he wasn't going to change his mind, she got mad and said those things, and the situation just got worse. He believes that she got her friend involved just to retaliate, and I agree with him. I don't even know what her friend's wife is going to say about all of this. They've only been married for 4 months, according to what my brother told me, and this is some insane crap that they're getting into. I'm grateful that my nephew himself is blissfully unaware of any of this, and even today he seemed as happy as ever. I hope that he stays this way forever because the poor kid really shouldn't have to deal with so much from such a young age. Update 4. Hi everyone. My sister-in-law visited me today to see my brother. He'd been here to drop the baby off for a while, and he'd been avoiding her for a few days. So she turned up at my house because she knew he was likely to come here. I tried to tell her to go away, but she looked so sickly and weak that I was having a really hard time turning someone like that away. So my brother took over for me, and instead of turning her away, he invited her into the house and told her to make it quick because he also had to leave for work soon. I was in the room with him, and the entire conversation happened right in front of me, which made me feel like I was intruding on something really personal. My sister-in-law was pleading with my brother to let her have joint custody, and she'd somehow managed to get rid of her friend since she didn't even want to involve him in the first place. But her emotions got the better of her, and she ended up telling him the truth, which is why he got involved. She said that she'd made her peace with the divorce and wasn't even going to contest it, but she desperately needed to see her baby because her cancer was just getting worse, and it had already progressed to stage 3, according to what her doctors told her this week. So she needed to spend as much time as she could with her son. I thought my brother was going to say no by how distraught he looked, but instead he told her that the most he could do for her at this point was that he could let her have supervised visits. He told her very calmly that she'd lied to him for months, and that he couldn't just accept it and move on just because she was sick. He was also suffering, and just because his pain and scars didn't make it any easier for him. He told her that he'd fought against everyone who called her a gold digger and a scammer, but eventually that's what the truth was since she cheated on him in spite of how hard he'd been defending her. So now, for his own sake and the sake of his son, he wanted to let her go and start afresh. My sister-in-law didn't seem too happy about what was being said, but my brother was quite firm that she could either agree to supervised visits once a week or she could go to court against him. After some silence, she said that she'd pick supervised visits, which is what the court would have ordered anyway. So now they only need to legally agree to that arrangement. The divorce is still going to happen though. I don't know what the future has in store for my brother and my nephew, but I pray that it's only good things. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My entitled sister asked me to plan her wedding. I refused, so she made me serve drinks at her engagement party. While serving, I slipped her fiancé a note exposing her fake college degree. I, 27F, have an older sister named Sheila who I absolutely despise. She is the reason why I am even on Reddit today, to ask if what I have decided is right or wrong. You see, Sheila is the eldest in my family. She was not a planned baby, and our parents had her when they were still in college. As a result, she had to spend the first 2 years more around our grandparents, who were helping our parents take care of her. Our parents did visit her as much as they could while still working hard to graduate. When they finally graduated, our parents decided to get married to each other, and this is when Sheila started to live with them. I guess this is why she is extremely clingy and wants attention from them all the time. However, Sheila spent 3 years being the center of our parents' world until my mother got pregnant with me. From the moment I was born, Sheila has despised me. My earliest memories are of her trying to push me away if I ever tried to crawl towards her, or even pull my hair until I started crying loudly in pain. Our parents would always try to console me, saying that this was normal sibling stuff and that every older sibling takes some time to adjust, But Sheila never changed over the years. If anything, she became even worse. She would loudly scream at me as a kid every time I would try to have a conversation with her. In many instances, she has tried to lock me multiple times to prevent me from going up to our parents. I would keep banging on the door or crying until one of our parents would come and rescue me. Sometimes she would even resort to slapping me or kicking me if she got annoyed around me as a child. I did not know that these were some major issues since my parents never made it a big deal. I always thought maybe eventually my big sister would warm up to me one day. The moment that truly changed my perspective on her happened one afternoon when she asked me to play ball with her while our dad was at work and our mom was taking a nap. Being taller, she had a clear advantage, but instead of playing fair, she kept throwing the ball directly at my face. I repeatedly asked her to stop, but she just smiled and continued. Eventually, the ball struck me hard, and I felt warm liquid trickling down my face. My nose was bleeding, and the pain was intense. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to hold back the pain as I attempted to retreat back into the house with blood staining my shirt. Sheila chased after me and halted me in my tracks. She insisted that I couldn't tell our parents what had happened and demanded that I fabricate a story about falling face first onto the ground. Despite my agony, she refused to let me seek help from Mom until I agreed to her terms. I did lie to our parents, but thankfully Dad had CCTV installed everywhere around the house, and he checked the footage. Our parents were shocked to see how Sheila had repeatedly hit me with the ball. Dad yelled at her. Mom tried to protect her, saying how perhaps this was a one-time thing, and gently tried to talk to Sheila to find out why she would ever do this to me. Sheila looked pissed that they had found out the truth and glared at me angrily throughout their questioning. She maintained her innocence, and my parents let it go, hoping that she would change. However, I knew she would blame me for all this, and this is when her bullying started to get even worse. She would intentionally try to slam the car door on my fingers whenever she could get a chance or shove me into the school hallway when she was sure there were no teachers around. If I ever sat down with friends, she would find me during lunch and tell my friends how they should not be around a stinky backstabber like me. She would try to even steal my lunchbox or my lunch money so I would have nothing to eat that day. Despite my attempts to confide in my mother, who tried to address Sheila's behavior through gentle parenting, it proved futile, and her bullying persisted. When I turned 9, I convinced my parents to throw me an anime-themed birthday party, something I had been pleading for, and to my delight, they finally agreed. However, Sheila had been relentless in her teasing, calling me a tomboy and scoffing that no one would even show up. Much to her surprise and mine, the opposite happened as I invited my classmates. Word spread among those boys and girls who shared my interest in anime, and they eagerly accepted the invitation. When the day of the party arrived, each guest arrived at my party dressed as their favorite anime character. It was a resounding success, and my parents, who had often seen me as reserved and shy due to Sheila's bullying, were amazed to witness how confident and well-liked I was among my peers. Sheila sulked around the house the whole evening and even refused to sing "Happy Birthday" with the other guests when it was time for me to cut the cake. Honestly, I didn't care because, for once, I liked being the center of attention without my sister trying to steal my thunder. Slowly and slowly, as I started to grow up, I felt more confident in my own skin, and I learned to stand up against Sheila and her relentless bullying, refusing to remain silent any longer. I decided to confront Sheila head-on every time she tried to taunt me or comment about my looks. Instead of passively enduring her cruelty, I took action. I would bully her back and call her out for her atrocious outfits, knowing that our father would address her behavior with a firm hand. I made sure to bring her actions to his attention whenever necessary. Unlike our mom, our father was always stern towards Sheila and held her accountable for her actions. She hated me even more because of this, but at least she learned quickly that I was not going to back down anymore. When Sheila graduated high school, she did not have any prospects of going to college. She told our parents how she wanted to take a gap year, which led to a lot of arguments since our parents wanted her to first get a college degree. Dad even told her how she could travel if she wanted to during her college breaks, but Sheila was adamant. Our parents begrudgingly agreed to her demand. However, this gap year for Sheila has turned into several years. In the first year, Our parents paid for all her trips as she backpacked across Europe and had a good time. When the year came to an end, Dad tried to talk to her again about college, but Sheila refused all communications. So Dad told her that she was on her own from then on and that he would not finance her trips anymore. She tried to rope in our mother for support, but Dad did not relent this time. At one point, Sheila told us how she wanted to become a digital nomad so she could keep traveling. However, that failed miserably because every job required a basic college degree. Left with few options, she reluctantly turned to volunteer work, which provided her with lodging and occasionally meals. While our parents couldn't hide their disappointment in her choices, they never really interfered in her decision. The only reason they were disappointed was because Sheila would constantly complain about how difficult her life was, yet do nothing to change it. Meanwhile, unlike Sheila, I was good at studies. Math and science were easy for me, and my grades were excellent. Even before graduating, I received acceptance to my dream university along with a partial scholarship. My parents couldn't have been prouder of my achievements, and news of my success prompted our relatives to urge them to throw a celebration in my honor. I think this decision of theirs was not well received by Sheila, who kept calling my mother and complaining to her about how they were more partial towards me. She felt my parents were trying to celebrate my success on her face and that I was indirectly taunting her since she could not get into any college. Honestly, I didn't even want her to show up if she still had such hatred for me. But Mom clearly missed her, considering Sheila hadn't been home in over 5 months. Mom also believed it wouldn't look right if the eldest sibling was absent during my celebratory party. Reluctantly, Sheila agreed to attend, albeit begrudgingly. She arrived a few days before the party and didn't even bother to congratulate me once, even though I politely greeted her. On the day of my party, our grandparents and relatives showed up with gifts, and everyone seemed to be having a great time. However, I couldn't help but notice Sheila's excessive drinking, which didn't escape our father's notice either. She kept drinking glasses of wine without even stopping to take a beat. Concerned, he attempted to intervene and stopped her from drinking another glass of wine, urging her to eat something instead. Sheila, however, angrily snatched her glass back from him and continued to drink. Some of the relatives did look at her with concern. Later, our grandfather clinked his glass to get everybody's attention as he wanted to give a toast. He started his speech by first mentioning how he and everyone present were so proud of both me and Sheila, and that they were all happy to see the both of us doing what made us happy. He congratulated me on my scholarship and told me how he could wait to visit me in college, which made everyone smile. Hearing this, Sheila started to snort in the middle of her drinking, which made my grandfather stop in the middle of his speech. Our parents looked at each other uncomfortably when Sheila started to giggle and then loudly told grandfather how no one was going to believe him for being proud of both of us when the real reason they were all here was because of the golden child. I could feel my cheeks burning with embarrassment as Sheila's hurtful words echoed through the room, drawing the attention of everyone present. Deep down, she and I both knew that this was completely baseless of her to accuse our parents and others of favoring me more. Our parents had always treated us with love and fairness, never showing favoritism. In fact, if anything, our mother had a special bond with Sheila since she was the eldest. We were always allowed to make our own life decisions. She had chosen to not go to college all on her own, and just because I had worked hard to get accepted with a scholarship, she was now trying to tear me down. I felt tears well up in my eyes as she kept loudly complaining about how everyone had shown up to support me with gifts, but no one supported her or helped her with her finances, which could have allowed her to travel to even more countries. She even said how our parents should have never had 2 children if they didn't really want to take care of one, and how our dad wasn't sending her any more money. At this point, my dad got up to walk towards her, so he could stop her from embarrassing herself any further and escort her out. But our grandfather was clearly pissed from hearing her words. He is always very soft-spoken, but for the first time, I heard him raise his voice on her. He reminded her how much our parents had to work hard to establish themselves when they had her during their college years, and how if they never wanted her, they could have easily had that option. He berated her for trying to turn this happy occasion into something ugly, and that if she was really jealous of her little sister, then this was an issue within herself that only she could resolve. Sheila, visibly shaken by our grandfather's words, retreated from the party in tears, with our mother following closely behind to offer her comfort. Later, Our parents tried their best to get Sheila to talk to us, but she never did, nor did she ever apologize for her outburst. I soon moved out of my home into my college dorm. While I focused on settling down at college and trying to make new friends, Sheila lived with our parents with no plans for her future. She would drink and party all night with a few people she knew around town. Dad wanted her to at least get a part-time job and even helped make a resume for her so she could start applying in various places, but she hardly took any serious interest in finding a job. Even when she did apply, she was rarely selected for an interview. During this time, I didn't know much about what was going on back at home since I was hundreds of miles away, but I did know that our parents were always worried about Sheila. One night, I woke up to my parents calling me frantically from the hospital. At first, I thought something had happened to them, but they assured me that they were fine, but that Sheila had been in a car crash. Turns out that she was drinking and driving and she had hit someone's fence. Luckily, no one was hurt. Because of this, she was not arrested. However, Dad had to pay for all the damages that she had caused. Even insurance refused to take care of the damages of the car since she was under the influence. Hence, it's justified to say that Dad was pissed and wanted her out of their house as soon as possible. Sheila kept trying to play the victim card yet again, telling them how she was going through things mentally and that at the end of the day, she didn't really hurt anybody. My dad told her that she had two choices. Either she could start going for therapy, apply for jobs, earn and save up money while living with them, or she could go do whatever it is that she wanted somewhere else since he was done. Sheila argued back that he had no right to try to control her life when he and Mom never controlled mine. She again tried to bring up how she was always treated differently than me. Long story short, Dad kicked her out as soon as she was discharged from the hospital. Sheila tried to contact our grandparents and relatives for help, asking them if she could move in with them instead, but they all knew about her recent troubles and were unwilling to take any responsibility for her. Surprisingly, in a few days she even gave me a call asking for money. I had a few thousands saved up since I had a part-time job during high school, so despite how badly she had treated me in the past, I decided to help her out. I could not bear letting my sister couch surf with her friends, so I transferred whatever money I could, hoping that she would make wiser decisions and that it would somehow repair our relationship. Well, not surprisingly, she used that money to booze and party with her friends instead of finding accommodation for herself. I saw her Snapchat story and tried to text her about it, thinking we could have a sane adult conversation about it, but she decided to block me instead. I was so pissed at how she just used me whenever she wanted to that I was also done with her manipulative behavior. I realized that if she wanted to continue being an irresponsible, immature person, then there was nothing that I could do to save her anymore. Sheila did try to reach out to our parents whenever she was in desperate need of money, but even Mom had enough of her at this point and would ignore her calls since we all knew how she was going to be using the money for. The next 3 years, we hardly heard from her, although both of our parents missed her. They hoped that she could eventually find her own footing in this world and turn her life around. During my 4th year of college, I received an unexpected call from Sheila, who had not contacted me for so many years. I did feel a bit of hesitation about picking up her call, but decided to just in case she was in some real danger. However, Sheila sounded excited as she asked me how I had been and what I had been up to lately. The most frustrating thing about having a conversation with Sheila is the way she acts and talks so nonchalantly, as if the past is all forgiven. I awkwardly brought up the fact that she had blocked me for years, but she dismissed it, claiming to have forgiven me for my past mistakes and wanting to start afresh. I had no idea as to what exactly she had forgiven me for, but before I could ask further, she opened up to me about how she had met someone last year. I asked her who he was, and she started gushing about how he was the dreamiest guy she had ever met and that she wanted us to meet him. She asked me if I would be free for dinner the weekend so I could visit our hometown where our parents could also meet this mystery guy. Knowing better than to trust Sheila this time, I told her that I wasn't sure and that I would get back to her on that. However, she kept insisting, telling me how it would not be a proper family reunion without me. She also had a conversation with our parents, who were surprised by how happy and excited she sounded. It's safe to say we were all curious to meet her after so many years. So, after talking to our parents, I decided to take an overnight bus back to my hometown that Friday night so I could attend lunch with Sheila. On the day we had lunch, Sheila introduced her new man, Jack, to all of us. They looked healthy and happy. Sheila told us how she had a job in a marketing firm which paid her quite well. This is where she met Jack. Their chemistry was evident, and I couldn't help but feel genuinely happy for my sister. However, things took an unexpected turn when Jack began praising Sheila's intelligence, mentioning how lucky he was to have met such an accomplished woman like her since she was a Berkeley graduate, while he had never got the chance to study at such a prestigious college. He continued to tell how Sheila would tell him all the time about her college life back in Berkeley and the type of peers she had been surrounded with during her 4 years. He also told us how he hoped that one day, if they ever got married and had kids, he would want their kids to turn out like Sheila. We looked at him and smiled awkwardly as we were all clearly confused as to why he would think Sheila had graduated from Berkeley when she didn't even have a college degree to begin with. Sheila avoided making any eye contact with us after that and swiftly changed the conversation to something else. The rest of lunch continued without any incident. After our lunch, Sheila hurriedly left with Jack, not even bothering to hug us goodbye. It was clear to both our parents and me that something wasn't right, and Sheila had clearly lied to Jack about her education. Later, she called us begging us not to tell Jack the truth. However, Dad wasn't satisfied with her explanation and pressed her for more details. This is how Dad found out that Sheila had forged college documents so she could apply for jobs. We were all understandably outraged by the severity of her deception. She also confessed to Dad that she had failed to mention other significant details about her life to Jack, such as the car accident that had occurred and the daily drinking habits that she previously had, because she didn't want him to know that side about her. While we empathized with her reluctance to disclose her past, we couldn't shake off the concern that she had fabricated an entire college degree and might continue to deceive Jack for the rest of her life. Even though both Mom and Dad told her that what she was doing was extremely wrong and that if she really loved Jack, then she should at least tell him the truth, as he had every right to know, Sheila refused, telling us not to interfere in her relationship. She was adamant that she could handle it in the future if Jack ever found out the truth, and kept telling how it was impossible for him to ever find out anyway. I did not want any part of her drama, so I kept my mouth shut and let my parents deal with this. It was just 3 months later when Sheila called to inform me that she and Jack had gotten engaged. I asked her if she thought they were moving a bit too fast since it had just been a year since they had gotten into a relationship, but Sheila laughed at me. She told me that I would not know anything about engagement or marriage since I had not met the right guy yet, as she had. This was true, so I congratulated her on her happiness while she told me how she wanted to have an intimate wedding with a few guests, and she had a few plans about how her wedding should look. She continued to tell me how, as her sister, she expected me to take charge of planning her wedding since she did not want to be stressed out. I inquired if this meant she wanted me to be her maid of honor, but Sheila informed me that she had already asked her coworkers to fill those roles. I asked her what about bridesmaids, but she told me that those roles were also filled up. She continued to say how being her wedding planner was the most important role in her wedding anyway, and that she and I could start planning immediately. I was a bit disappointed that she wasn't even including me in the wedding. Instead, she expected me to take up planning her entire wedding, which was something I never even asked for in the first place. I assured her that her coworkers, who knew her well and spent more time with her, would be better suited to help with the planning instead of me. Sheila argued back that her coworkers were all working women with their own families and that they could not spend their free time doing this. She told me that because I was still a college student and apparently wasn't as busy as them, I should be grateful that she was assigning me this responsibility. Her reasoning made me laugh because it reminded me of how manipulative she could be when she wanted something. I simply refused and told her that this was my last year in college and I had quite a lot of things on my plate already, so she should ask someone else to be in charge of her wedding planning. This must have pissed her off because she started to say how she expected me to contribute to her wedding by doing this since I was her family. I replied back that I had no problem helping here and there, but that I could not possibly take on such a heavy task with all the other things I had to manage as a college student. My refusal to help her has since become a huge issue, as she has immediately reached out to our parents, trying to urge them to pressure me into agreeing to take care of her wedding planning. She says that, as the bride, it is humiliating for her to do these tasks when other brides can depend on their family. When our parents tried to compromise and told her that maybe she could pay me for the hours, as being a wedding planner is not easy, I would have to come up with a wedding theme and guest seating chart, contact the caterers and help her find the perfect venue while also working hard for my college, but she refused, telling them that no sister would ever ask to get paid for such menial tasks and that I was just being selfish as usual. She has continued to send me several messages, but I have refused to answer, and my parents are also choosing to stay out of it now because they do agree with my decision. So, Reddit, am I right in not agreeing to her demand? If you had a sister like Sheila, would you ever help her plan her wedding? Even though she has done absolutely nothing for me in my entire life, but expects me to just drop everything and help her out? Update 1. When I posted this, I thought maybe a handful of you would comment about how y'all agree that my sister is just being too much. However, I have received hundreds of messages from strangers telling me what a red flag Sheila is and how they have also had family members just as toxic as her. I am truly sorry to anyone who got triggered with my story, and I feel sorry that some of you have had to go through what I have gone through. For the first time in my life, I feel validated with my emotions. It's not easy having a bully in our lives, and Sheila truly is a nightmare to be around. A lot of you have asked me to tell Jack the truth and spare him from a lifetime of suffering with my sister. I do agree with the points made, and if I were Jack, I would definitely want to know if my partner had forged an entire fake college degree and knowingly not mentioned important things from their past. I plan on telling Jack the next time I see him, and we will update here when I do. Meanwhile, Sheila has kept texting me for the past 2 days, forcing me to accept the responsibility of planning her wedding, and I have politely kept declining, instead telling her how I would be happy to help if she had any other easier task for me. Update 2. I know it's been a few weeks, but all hell has broken loose. As some of you who have kept up with my story know, I was going to tell my sister's fiancé the truth about her before they were married. A number of people advised me to reach out to him on social media, but I think it might have been weird since we have only ever talked once. Instead, I decided to write a note explaining everything that Sheila had put me through and how she had been lying to him. I planned on giving the note to him during their engagement party, which Sheila was throwing to celebrate with our relatives and her friends. When I did arrive at her place, exhausted and hungry after my long bus ride, since she lives in a town 6 hours away from my college town, Sheila didn't even greet me properly. She stopped me at the entrance, telling me that I was late and took my bags from my hand. She directed me to the back and told me that they did not have enough servers for that day since some of them had not shown up unexpectedly. Because I had previously told her that I could help her out with an easy task, she expected me to take up the task of serving drinks to all the guests during her party. As Sheila pushed me towards the servers at the back without even giving me a chance to freshen up or even greet my parents and relatives, I was taken aback. My parents shared my surprise at seeing me serving drinks, but I flashed them a reassuring smile to convey that it wasn't a big deal, as I did not want them to worry. Unbeknownst to Sheila, this unexpected turn of events presented the perfect opportunity for me to discreetly slip a note to her fiancé while she was preoccupied mingling with her guests. When I handed a glass to Jack, he graciously thanked me and remarked that I didn't need to be serving. Seizing the moment, I passed him my note and quietly urged him to find a private moment to read it as soon as possible. Not even 15 minutes later, Jack emerged from the washroom with a flushed face. He walked up to Sheila and asked her if she had really been lying to him all along. Sheila looked at him in confusion as Jack continued to press if she had actually never been to college before. Her eyes widened in shock as the guests around us looked at them with confusion. Turning to our parents for confirmation, Jack asked them, and my dad didn't hesitate to reveal that Sheila had never pursued higher education. Everyone watched in stunned silence as Jack then asked Sheila loudly as to how she could have lied to him about such an important thing and how embarrassing this was for him to find out this way, just after getting engaged. Some of their coworkers had their mouths wide open as they watched the drama unfold. Jack continued to tell her that if she could lie to him about her fake college degree, then there were so many things that she could have lied to him about and he did not know what to believe anymore. Long story short, the engagement party ended in a disaster. Sheila was left embarrassed in front of everyone. In the end, her fiancé left with his family, telling her that he needed some space away from her. After they left, the party was pretty much a bust because everyone kept staring at Sheila, who looked shaken up. Even her coworkers left hastily after a few minutes, and I have no idea what will happen to her job, especially since her manager had been in attendance at the party. Sheila does suspect that one of our relatives, perhaps a cousin or me, may have revealed the truth to Jack, but she lacks any evidence. In the note I passed to Jack, I had urged him not to disclose that I had informed him of the truth, and I am grateful that he never implicated me. My parents have told Sheila that this is all her fault since they wanted her to be upfront with her partner from the very beginning, but she had chosen to not do it. I will update next if she and Jack still decide to get married after this or not. Update 3. Well, as some of you predicted, Jack has called off the wedding. He even asked Sheila to give him back the engagement ring since it belonged to his mother and was a family heirloom. He has also asked her to move out of their house and refuses to communicate with her any further. He has still not told her anything about how he found out the truth about her. As for some of you who keep telling me that I should confess and tell my sister about my note, I will absolutely not do that. I would like to clarify that I never lied to anyone. You can judge me all you want, but I did absolutely nothing wrong. I simply exposed the truth, and her fiancé chose to end their relationship. If I confess now, she is going to redirect all the anger and resentment she is feeling towards me, and I am not going to invite more drama and bullying into my life. I hope that this breakup teaches Sheila to hopefully become a better person in the future. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Noticed my wife coming home half-dressed, so I checked the security footage. What I discovered ended our marriage. I, 27M, was married to my ex-wife, 24F, for almost 2 years before I found out she wasn't as faithful as she claimed. My wife and I met at the beach on a summer afternoon, and we had a fantastic time together. She had come with a group of male and female college friends. They were all law students, but they decided to take a little break from school. I was also with a few friends, so some of us interacted with my wife and her friends, and we got along well. While other people's conversations ended the day after we left the beach to our different destinations, my wife and I exchanged numbers and kept talking occasionally. Shortly after we met, we started dating and married 2 years later. Before my wife and I married, our relationship was not smooth. My wife came from a well-to-do background, and her parents gave us a very tough time. They were against my wife dating someone like me, and they told her she would be making a grave mistake if she ended up with me. They said so because I worked 12 hours a day, had 2 different jobs, and couldn't get a good-paying job no matter how hard I tried. Her parents were a pain in the ass, but because we loved each other, we vowed to get married with or without her parents' approval. After months of her parents trying to separate us, they stopped and accepted our relationship. With her parents out of our way, I expected we would not have any other issues, but I had no idea more was coming. 2 months before we married, my wife cheated on me with one of her classmates and confessed to me. She said it happened by mistake, and the guilt had been eating her up. Meanwhile, I had noticed during the time she claimed it happened that she was always looking sad and somehow depressed, and each time I questioned her to find out what was bothering her, she would say she was okay. When she confessed that she had cheated on me with her classmate and couldn't explain how it happened, I forgave her. Now that I share my story, I regret making such a mistake and wish I was smarter. I believed she wouldn't do it again because I felt if she came clean by herself and didn't wait for me to find out, then she was genuinely sorry. This was very hard on me, but because I was young, stupid, and in love, I forgave her, and she promised it would never happen again. We continued with our wedding and were married for almost 2 years, though we never discussed her escapade with her classmate again. It never left my head. I remembered her confession every day, but I never mentioned it or talked about it. I tried my best to let it remain in the past because she had moved on, and she was trying her best to be my perfect wife. She was extremely nice to me, pampered me, and treated me like the only man in the world. I don't know if it was her way of saying sorry for what she had done, but irrespective of everything she did, each time I looked at her I wondered if she was still sleeping with him behind me. It got to the point where I began to feel bad because I thought I was still holding on to the past, and I wasn't enjoying our marriage like I should have. It took me a whole year after we married to forcefully put everything behind me and go with the flow. I knew I had not cared for her like I had initially planned from the beginning of our relationship, so I started making little effort, like making breakfast in bed for her and fixing dinner for us before she returned from work. My ultimate plan was to do something very special for us on our 2nd anniversary, and I looked forward to it. Eventually, the day of our 2nd anniversary reached, and I made all the preparations to sweep her off her feet and at least make up for the times I didn't treat her right. I even got a costly gift, the dress she would wear, and accessories to go with it. I went home early that day from work and waited hours for her to return. When she didn't return home like I expected, I called her to ask why, and she said one of her professors fixed an impromptu class, and she couldn't miss it because attending the class came with a score. I felt disappointed when I heard that but didn't try to argue. I expected that since it was our wedding anniversary, she wouldn't want to miss a special occasion like that. I can't explain why, but that feeling of her doing something behind me crept up again, and I couldn't shake it off this time. To be at peace with myself, I decided to check her Snapchat location, and it was different from the location she schooled at. I didn't believe it at first, but after checking thrice, I realized my wife had been lying to me again. I went to the location without wasting time, and it rang a bell. It was the same apartment her classmate, whom she slept with before we married, lived in. I can't say I could explain how he felt that evening. Being heartbroken or disappointed would not describe it enough. I wanted to storm into the apartment and attack her, but I had a better idea. I called her proud parents to come over to the apartment so we could surprise her for our anniversary. I knew they would come because they would do anything for their only child. Not long after I called, her parents arrived, and we went to the apartment to say surprise. As soon as we knocked on the door and her lover came to open it, her parents saw her walking totally naked inside the house. Her father yelled her name, and her mother pushed her app aside and charged in. I'd love to say that everything was disastrous that evening. She didn't know if she was begging me or her parents. I watched her as her mother screamed and questioned her, and her father stood there in shock. After she covered herself with the sheets, I didn't say much. I only told her it was over between us and that her cheating on me again was my fault. She didn't understand, and I didn't bother explaining. I don't know what happened between her and her parents after I left. She came home later that week and asked if we could talk. When I said no, she picked the things she needed and left the house. She didn't even press for me to let her explain. I didn't know what to think or assume when she acted that way before she came home to take her stuff. I already contacted a divorce lawyer, and when the papers were ready, she signed them without hesitation. Until today, I still wonder if she ever loved me like she claimed or was only enjoying the tussle of power with her parents. The last time I tried stalking her on Facebook, she posted a picture of her in her app with a mushy caption. I was so angry, and I blocked her instantly because of that picture. I quit sulking and wondered if she loved me. I saw how happy she was, and I felt stupid for still living in the past and putting my life on hold. I am fine now and have moved on faster than expected. I also realized that we have power over our emotions, and feeling miserable because of a cheating spouse should never be an option. I no longer care about her. All I care about now is me and my future. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Ex-husband left me for his younger work wife while I was pregnant. Now she lost their baby. My 36-year-old ex-husband, Tom, 35, left me for his work wife, Tammy, 25, 2 years ago. I never liked her, even before I found out about their relationship. The first time I met her at a work event, while heavily pregnant with my youngest, she told me, "Better up your wife game, or I might steal him off you." 3 months later, she did. This woman literally came with him to help pack the day he moved out and tried to have a one-on-one conversation on how she wanted our relationship going forward because she was going to be in my life. Then, she said, as a joke, "Told you I'd steal him away." I'm not going to lie. I'm thankful she did because when my ex made a comment about her being 23 and her brain not being fully developed, I got so angry it turned my heartbreak into relief. I got everything in the divorce because I got him in his air fog and gave 50-50 custody for our kids' sake. I'm civil for the sake of my kids so we can both attend events without drama. But other than that, I couldn't honestly care less about them. Around June, Tammy came instead of Tom for pickup and practically skipped towards me to show off her engagement ring, saying she wanted me as a bridesmaid along with my daughters for something I didn't catch because I was in a rush to get our cat to the vet. She got upset because I just summarized her whole conversation for Tom's texts a few hours later. The same happened again in September when she told me she was pregnant, which again, my zero fucks given upset her. In December, when she told me, the second I opened the car door, "Tom's finally getting a son," I sarcastically replied. I'm sure Lord Tom's excited for an heir to take over his lands and titles, which caused drama too because Tom's family found it hilarious. December was the last time I saw her until today at drop-offs with Tom. As they approached me, I noticed Tammy didn't look pregnant anymore. Tammy tearfully said, "We lost the baby." I didn't answer. I just told Tom, "Our second daughter has a birthday party tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and the oldest has gymnastics at 5 o'clock. Tammy literally screamed at me. I was a heartless bee and bitter, then grabbed the girls' bags and walked away. Tom said, I could show a little humanity towards Tammy. Regardless of my feelings, she is my kid's stepmother. I told Tom, I don't care about what he's going through because outside our kids, I don't care about them, and I don't owe Tammy anything, especially pity. He called me an a-hole along with other things and left. Usually this wouldn't bother me, but my ex-in-laws, who I have a good relationship with, have told me I should have shown Tammy some empathy and at the very least pretended to care for the sake of the kids. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. So you're supposed to show empathy to someone who ruined your marriage and goes out of their way to get a reaction out of you? No NTA. OP. She said she wanted to be friends and tells people like my in-laws that I can't put the past behind me for the sake of the kids. Even called me a pick-me beneficial syrup. Comment 2. He's no longer your problem. He's hers until she becomes too old for him. Enjoy your life. That's the best revenge. Opie, I'm enjoying my life, honestly. Single life is so underrated. I adopted 2 senior cats last week because I found out at my local book club that our shelter has an end-of-life event every month, so you can give a senior cat a loving home before the end. I think when my kids are grown, I'm going to be the local cat lady everyone thinks is a witch. Comment 3, NTA. You should have filed for more custody. He isn't mentally well. Cause when she said that at the party/first meeting, I'd have broken her nose. If I was the same sex, you owe neither of them anything aside from the little human interaction needed to make sure the kids are taken care of. He is a piece of shit and she a terrible human who I'm sure I'm going to get flack for this bit, but got what she had coming. Karma. You are cordial and don't deny their father access to them 50/50ths. I'm going to take on good faith you don't badmouth him in your home when he isn't there. But the kids' interaction out of sight and earshot of the kids that are not sugar rainbows and unicorns are not on you to make sure they are. She is an adulterer, home wrecker, self-centered narcissist who has been trying to rub this in your face and use your kids' emotions and well-being as a shield for herself. Opie. No, I'd never badmouth him to the kids. Ever. Don't get me wrong, at the start of everything, I did talk about them both with my family and friends, but now I couldn't care less about them. Our oldest is 13, then we have a 12, 7, and 2-year-old, so I'm going to let them form their own opinions as they grow older about them. We'll say Tammy is a good stepmom, to which I'm glad for. I still wouldn't trust Tammy not to try to poison them against you out of spite. My girls are extremely smart, and my oldest told her father, I've never said a bad word about him to them, so she wouldn't stand for it either, nor would she tell them any information about me. Do both Tom and Tammy have asked multiple questions about me in the past to the kids, and they tried to convince them I was a bad person during the bridesmaid situation? My oldest told me and her grandmother, ex-Mill. I told my ex I'd take him back to court if it ever happened again, and his family said they'd back me. Update 1, February 3rd, 2024. So I texted Tom today. Due to Tammy's mental state, I prefer if he or his mom would do all the pickups from now on. And if Tammy's mental health gets any worse, I want the girls full-time for a couple of weeks until it's a healthier environment for the kids. Tom tried to call me, but I texted him I prefer texts, and he said he wanted to have a heart-to-heart. Yeah, not going to happen. I asked if it involved the girls, but he said yes, but it's also about all of us going forward and the relationship he wishes for us to have. Basically, he wanted family therapy with himself, me, Tammy, and the kids. I said if he thinks the kids need to see a therapist, I would be happy to find one we both can agree on, but again, he just kept bringing it back to us. So after a few hours knowing it was going nowhere, I just left him on read. I called my ex-in-laws, told them the situation and how I don't want to be involved with anything Tammy and Tom unless my kids are involved. I reminded them I've expressed multiple times I don't care, and I don't want anything more than a civil co-parent relationship. I told them even though I value my friendship with the family, ex-in-laws, I will go low contact if it happens again. Mill apologized, saying she was very emotional because, at the end of the day, it is her son and he was heartbroken, plus the baby was her grandchild, which I completely understand and I forgive her. Now here's where it gets weird. Tammy showed up to my house. Now I've watched enough true crime to know not to open the door, and I talked SL recorded her by the doorbell cam. She was crying, saying she was sorry and she just wanted to be my friend. Then she said, I need to forgive her because she lost her baby as karma for what she did to me. She was saying other stuff, but I couldn't understand her. I rang the police, then my brother and Tom. She didn't get arrested or anything, but Tom talked to my brother, said he was taking her home, and agreed it's best if I have them full-time for now. My girls are at home safe. My brother will be staying with me for the foreseeable future. I'll be seeing a lawyer first thing Monday about full custody and a restraining order because I have a sinking feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. I just kept telling Tammy to leave my property because I don't want to hear it. I don't know why I was brought into this because I was looking forward to my chill weekend. I'd like to also say, for the people in my last post calling me jealous or bitter, there's nothing to be jealous of. Someone who cheats on you isn't a prize. He is Tammy's problem now. And for those of you saying my not giving a care about my ex's life means I'm not over him because I don't want to be friends with him or Tammy, your ex moved on when they say leave them alone. They're not playing hard to get. They really don't want to talk to you. Comments where OP has replied. Comment. I hope it gets better for you, but as you said, and I agree with you, it's going to get worse. I don't understand what it is that people want you to do. He cheated, left, and you both moved on. Why should you care about his life if it doesn't involve your children? It doesn't involve you. Your happiness trumps whatever he's got going on in his life. Opie. They want me to be the bitter, evil ex-wife to justify themselves, even though I feel nothing towards either of them. Like I'd have the same reaction if they told me that day they won the lottery. I've gotten to a place I'm happy with my life and love it. Maybe they think that since I've not gone on a date since the divorce, I'm still not moved on. But I've not dated anyone because I don't want to. Single life is awesome. Why ruin it? Update 2. February 5th, 2024. I won't be updating until all the legal issues are over with and my own mental health is in a better place, so it could take anything up to 3 to 6 months. I spoke to a lawyer today. I'm obviously not going to go into details, but with all the evidence and witnesses on my side, I've a good shot at getting full custody, but it's only day 1. And nothing has started yet. Tom sexually assaulted me. It didn't go far thanks to my brother, but it's left me very shaken. I agreed to let Tom come over to visit the kids whenever he wanted, so when he came over yesterday evening and went into the garden with the kids, I went for a shower. Coming out of the bathroom, he cornered me about wanting to talk. I told him it wasn't the time and told him either go out to the girls or leave. He started saying he made a mistake. Tammy was a nut job, and he wanted to come home to us. I told him to get the hell out of my house, and there is no way. So he started saying stuff I physically can't type without breaking down, then tried to force a makeout session, to put it politely. Thankfully, my brother heard and came running. Unfortunately, the kids heard everything when my brother and Tom started fighting. I was in complete shock at the time to try to do anything to help the situation, even when Tom was being taken away. I was too scared to move and couldn't confront my crying children. Not my proudest moment. Remember I said before I adopted older cats? While I put cameras throughout common areas in my home to watch them while I'm at work, one of those areas is the hall between my room and the bathroom. I don't know what to do with Tom going forward, but I know I can't face him ever again, even with supervision from my father or brother, who both work in law enforcement. Tammy sent hundreds of messages to me and my oldest too, but I can't block her by my lawyer's request. My ex-in-laws have reached out and told me they'll help me in whatever way I need. His sisters have disowned him, but this is still all very new. They might change their minds. I plan on moving after everything gets sorted so I won't ever cross Tammy's path. Thank you all for your love and support. Hopefully, I can give you all a positive update in the future. And to the young men sending messages asking for nudes or sending me pictures of your privates, thanks for the laugh, but I'm done with dick comments. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1, blimey, you poor thing. I am so sorry for you and very sad that you had to endure this. I hope the children didn't see their dad violating their mother. Crying face. Best of luck in the future. Opie. They didn't see. He told them he went in for drinks, but due to me screaming, they came in and saw my brother starting bashing their dad off stuff and calling him a rapist along with other things. Then Tom tried to fight my brother to get away. Just to be clear, my ex didn't get as far as to rape me. Comment 2. Still, it's scary for kids. I can't see why your ex would think this was appropriate when he came over to be with the children. Opie. I don't know. Going through his and Tammy's heads to be this focused on me when they should be seeking comfort in each other. But Tom did say, I never lost any of his kids when it was happening. Like, if I'm being honest, he was saying some unhinged, creepy things. Like, I've known you since you were 14. It was like I was looking at Tom. But at the same time, it wasn't him, if that makes sense. Comment 3. Christ on a bike. I thought police involvement would be because of Tammy, not Tom. I thought Tom would try to get you back when he realized how badly he screwed up by leaving you for Tammy. But sexual assault is not the way to make a woman think. Hell yes. Let's go. You can come home at once. I'm so glad you had your brother there to rescue you. What the FCK is he on? That he thought to himself, how do I woo my ex-wife back? I know, I'll force myself upon her. That'll make her want me back. Really, Tom, fking really. Please don't beat yourself up for freezing, as it's a fairly common reaction to assault. I'm so sorry this happened to you. Please tell me you're pressing charges. I would also suggest counseling for you and your girls when you're ready, as this is going to stay with all of you. Again, I'm so sorry he did this to you. Opie. Yeah, I'm going to press charges, and my kids will get counseling because my oldest is blaming herself and won't leave my side. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Rich parents neglected their nerdy son his whole life, denied him basic needs. Now, his successful tech business has them crying scam and begging for his forgiveness. Hey guys, using a throwaway since I don't want to clog up my main account. So, I, 27M, started my own business with the help of a couple of my college buddies a year ago. We've been doing great financially and are profitable right now. A few days back, my estranged parents, both 54, who hadn't spoken to me since graduation, finally contacted me to ask if I'd be willing to let them come on board as partners since they wanted to invest in my business. But I said no. I didn't discuss it with my friends, as everyone knew my terrible equation with my parents, and I didn't want them involved in my business at any cost. My parents have always neglected me and mocked me as a kid growing up, which was really strange because I was the kind of child that most parents would be proud of. They're both pretty well off. My dad's a dental surgeon, and my mother's the CFO at a firm. I grew up in a high-achieving household, and naturally I was very ambitious right from a very young age. But I don't know why my parents were never very supportive of me and would make fun of me for being too nerdy. They were rich but barely contributed to my basic needs, purely out of spite. I had no idea why they hated me so much until I realized that indirectly, they blamed me for not being able to reach the kind of success they'd hoped for. They were pretty successful, but they weren't famous like they'd hoped to be. I found out about this while ranting to my aunt, my dad's younger sister, now 46F, the only person who understood me when I was 16. And she told me the truth behind their unreasonable behavior and hatred for me, since she thought I was old enough to know. They blamed me because they'd had to put time and money into raising me, and they believed that had they invested the same amount of time, money, and hard work in their jobs rather than me, then they would have been at a much better place in their respective professions. They had me because of pressure from their families and didn't even want a kid. But now that they were stuck with me, they had to deal with me somehow, and their choice of dealing with me was to bully me and make me feel bad constantly. I'd say I was deprived of a lot of things as a kid because, even though everything was paid for, I never had any help from my parents, not with small things like maybe homework or projects, and definitely not with bigger things like fights at school. If I asked for anything that I didn't absolutely need, they'd just turn me away or worse, make fun of me. They'd mock my appearance, which was easy since I was pretty scrawny and nerdy looking. And if not that, they'd make fun of my affinity for computers and tell me that I'd grow up to be an IT guy and nothing else, so investing in me was a waste of money. I was seriously emotionally neglected, and on top of that, these are the kind of insults that I was used to growing up. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it and instead used to believe that there must be something wrong with me, which is why my parents don't love me the way others love their kids. It was pretty effed up, but for me it was normal. In my late teenage years I started rebelling against it a little, but my dad shut it down pretty quickly and threatened to have me thrown to the streets if I didn't behave myself. So, instead, I resorted to talking about them to my aunt, who asked me 1,000 times if I wanted her to report them. But I kept saying no because I was scared of what happened next. My aunt wouldn't be able to adopt me, and I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. So, I chose to suffer at my parents' house, and whenever things would get rough, I'd speak to my aunt and feel better. Then, when I found out the reason behind my parents' behavior, I decided that I was going to disappear from their lives after I was done with college. Since they didn't want me, they'd sent me to public school. I'm sorry if I sound arrogant, but I think it was a waste of my potential. Anyway, that should have been enough of a hint for me to know that they didn't give a damn about my education or even me in general. But I still had some expectations from them, which all went to hell when they told me that after high school ended and I turned 18, I wouldn't have a place in their home anymore until I made something of myself, and additionally, they wouldn't pay for my college tuition either. I finally snapped and told them that they couldn't do this to me because I knew I had a bright future. I've been a straight-A student all my life, and if they kicked me out at this stage of my life, right before I was about to start college, they'd be jeopardizing my future. They were adamant and told me, "You don't even have much of a future that we can jeopardize. So quit thinking so highly of yourself." Then they told me that I shouldn't hold out hope for a bright future because my teachers and friends had all wrongly led me to believe that I was some genius, and that some lowly IT guy who fixed computers for dummies in corporate offices is probably the highest position I'll ever be able to get. Honestly, it was a pretty ridiculous thing to say because even these allegedly lowly IT guys are pretty well versed in their own way and are equally deserving of respect. But my ignorant, disgusting parents would never understand that. I tried to argue my way into making them pay for my tuition at least. I'd worry about my accommodation later. But they didn't budge, so I ran away from home a few weeks before my 18th birthday and showed up at my aunt's house. I applied to a lot of colleges with scholarships while my aunt still continued trying to persuade my parents, but with no luck. Finally, we decided that I'd attend college wherever I had the highest percentage of my tuition waived off. Luckily, I got into a college with an 80% scholarship, and it had a decent computer science program as well, so I was satisfied with it. And my aunt decided to pay for whatever amount I needed. She's in sales and didn't earn as much as my parents back then. She was pretty middle class, but she still agreed, and it helped that my tuition was pretty low since I was a scholarship student. I'd only come back home if it was absolutely necessary for me, and otherwise, I'd stay in my dorm because my aunt would often travel for work. So that's how I planned on going through with college. My life improved once I was out of my parents' house. I was no longer worried or anxious all the time, so I felt a lot happier and was able to make friends a lot easier than I used to be. That's how I met my current friends and business partners who agreed to set up our own IT firm, and we're doing relatively well now. I thought that my parents wouldn't care what I was up to since they never cared back when I was in school. But when they learned that I was graduating college and I was valedictorian, they decided to attend the ceremony but couldn't enter since I didn't buy them tickets, and neither did I invite them as we were not on speaking terms. We met after the ceremony was over, and I was very shocked to see them standing with my aunt, who looked just as annoyed as me since she'd probably had to deal with them after the graduation ceremony. I had plans to go out drinking with my friends, but instead, I spent the next 2 hours in my parents' hotel room fighting and arguing with them. They were mad that they hadn't been invited to the graduation but my aunt had and wanted an explanation, which was funny because, hello, they didn't let me live with them, kicked me to the streets at 18, and then told me they wouldn't pay for my tuition even when they could afford to. That, plus all the mistreatment and emotional issues they caused me throughout my childhood and well into my adulthood. I didn't think they deserved an explanation. But I didn't want them to throw a tantrum outside my college campus. So I accompanied them to the hotel before losing my temper at them. I told them that I didn't want to see them ever again, and if they tried to contact me, then I'd make sure I got a protective order or something against them. Then I left the hotel to go meet my friends. I wasn't going to let them ruin a happy day for me. And after that, I didn't speak to them. I heard from my aunt later that they were disappointed and angry, but they'd left and were discussing the idea of disinheriting me, which made no difference because I didn't expect them to leave anything to me either. So that was it. It's been almost 7 years since that happened, and we haven't spoken since then. Couple of days ago, they called me out of the blue. They'd asked my aunt for my phone number, and she'd given it to them because they told her they wanted to apologize. She told me that she'd wanted to alert me about it, but she'd forgotten, and I get it. She's busy nowadays, so it's fine. But they didn't apologize for anything and went straight to the business proposition because now investing in me is profitable to them as compared to all those years ago. I obviously declined, hung up, and then blocked them. I told my friends about it as well, but they didn't mind me declining without consulting with them first because they knew about my personal history with my parents. I didn't know what else to expect afterward, but the very next day, they hit back by tagging me and all my buddies in a scathing Facebook post where they were talking about how I was not the self-made computer whiz that I made myself out to be, but just a guy with daddy's money who had succeeded in creating a moderately successful business all because of his parents. But now I was refusing to acknowledge the help they'd given me all through these years. I was dumbstruck at the post and almost called them up to tell them off. But before any of that, I decided to get back at them with something I'd kept to myself for years. I had a couple of old videos of them from when I was a teenager and still used to live with them where I was documenting every day of my life living with my parents, just in case I'd ever need to prove in court or whatever that they were terrible parents. I'd never posted because I didn't want anything to do with them, and if I posted these videos of them being rude to me, making fun of me, and acting like I was the worst thing that could have happened to mankind, then there would surely be repercussions for it. And back then, I just didn't want any drama, so I let it go. However, this Facebook post of theirs changed everything, and I finally posted those. Now here's where I might have been the a-hole. I used my public profile on Instagram, wrote a long caption explaining my history with my parents, and then uploaded the videos to call them out. After that was done, I called my lawyer and filled her in on whatever was going on. But she was already a step ahead and had started the paperwork to file a defamation lawsuit against my parents for what they'd done, and was about to get in touch with my co-partners as well to ask them if they'd be fine with this lawsuit since their names have been dragged into the Facebook post as well. There were already a couple of comments on their post from a few of my relatives and some friends of my parents saying that it's great that I'd finally been exposed and that they'd never work with us, so we definitely had grounds to sue. I also sent those screenshots to my attorney for future use and told my business partners about it as well so they'd be in the loop. So once that was all done, I waited for them to call me begging for forgiveness, and they did call me for my aunt's number a few days later. But they called me demanding an apology and saying that I'd screwed up by posting those videos because while they posted their rant about me on their personal accounts on Facebook, which meant only a few people would see it, I posted it on my public profile, and a lot more people were going to see that since I had a significant number of followers. They told me that I needed to take that post down ASAP because people had already started messaging them with hateful stuff, and some were even threatening them. This could all effectively end both their careers since they didn't come off well in the videos I'd posted. And if their employers saw these posts, then they'd be screwed. I got a little defensive there and told them that they deserved this and then hung up. But I did archive those posts and turned off my phone for a while. When I finally got back to my phone after a couple of hours, my parents sent me an email stating that they were apologetic for everything that had happened in the past but also mentioned that what I'd done in retaliation was awful. Besides, I posted personal videos that featured them without their consent, and that was grounds for them to sue as well, apparently. I guess they'd been served with a defamation suit, so they told me that I needed to take it back or else they wouldn't hesitate to talk about how unethical I'd been, and that would certainly negatively impact my business. I've discussed this with my business partners, and they really don't think there's any reason for us to back down from the suit because they think we did things the right way, unlike those who lied and presented distorted facts just to make me look like a liar and take away my credibility. They have a point, but for some reason I still feel guilty going through with it because they have apologized in the email, and I know that this suit is going to be bad for all of us in one way or the other because of all the negativity attached to it. I don't understand what to do right now. I'd rather not sue my parents for defamation even though they apologized to me. Update 1. Hey guys, so I've decided to go through with the lawsuit for a couple of reasons. It wasn't my decision alone anyway, since my friends were also involved. And even though their post wasn't as widely viewed as mine when I uploaded it, I'm sure a couple of people still saw it, and it could have really affected my business. The intent was also to negatively publicize my personality and firm so they can get an ego high off of ruining my life's work. So I think defamation is fair game. Besides, their apology doesn't mean much when they apologized only and only realized that their own careers were at stake if they didn't. So they didn't really mean it. They just said that they were sorry for the sake of it. I'd just been going easy on my parents for my entire life, almost because I was afraid of them, even as an adult who's almost 30. I feel scared to even go up against them because that's just how I've been wired. I guess the fear is so deep-rooted that I didn't even realize this was fear until you guys in the comments pointed out to me exactly how many times I'd had the opportunity to tell people the truth about my parents in the past. But I didn't do so on purpose, all because I was scared of what might happen. The thing is, now I know nothing can happen to me, and I'm the one in power now, so they really can't touch me. I'm going to sue them regardless of their apology, which was pretty half-hearted to even begin with, and then we'll see what happens. Once we're through, the one thing that I'm sure about is that I'm going to make sure that they pay. I'm done being the good guy now, especially for people who don't deserve it. My parents were downright cruel to me, and no child deserves to grow up in a house like that. So now that I have the chance to get revenge on them in my own way, I definitely will do it. I've been the bigger person so far, but I don't see any reason to continue that any longer when they keep picking on me again and again just because they want a spot in the limelight. It's just disgusting, and I won't stand for it. Not anymore. Update 2. My aunt contacted me today to ask what I decided to do about the situation with my parents, and I told her that we were going through with the lawsuit. She was satisfied with the answer and then told me that she was proud of me. She also apologized for never doing enough when I was a kid. But honestly, I don't blame her. Back then, she was also just trying to make her way in the world and starting out in her career, so she couldn't really afford to take care of me. But when it counted, she stepped up and did the needful, and I'll forever be grateful for that. My grandparents and everyone else in my family were practically in love with my parents, so none of them would ever buy it if I told them how my parents were in reality and how they treated me. Even if my aunt had gone to CPS, there would have been a fair chance that I would have ended up in foster care or something worse. I'm not saying that she's perfect, but I feel the need to come to her defense when there are so many people jumping at the opportunity to hate on the only person who had ever taken a stand for me and tried to be there for me in whatever capacity she could. I don't care if what she did was right or wrong, but whatever she did was good enough for me. That's it. I haven't spoken to my parents after the email, and they're probably still waiting for me to withdraw the suit. It's been 4 days, and we've decided that we're going to go ahead with a court-appointed mediator for the negotiations first, and then if the need arises, we'll let the case go to court. But for now, an out-of-court settlement is what we're trying to go for. My parents have money, and they have a lot of it, so it's not like I have anything to feel guilty about, and they're the ones who screwed up, so of course they have to pay for it. I don't know what's up with their jobs right now since there's been a lot of hue and cry from their end when I posted those videos of them, claiming that I was putting their jobs on the line by doing this. I can't believe the amount of gaslighting and drama that their phone call and emails were full of. I'm just lucky I didn't go soft and fall for any of it because that would have been pretty sad and pathetic. And to think that they even tried to equate the two incidents as if what I'd done was just as bad as what they'd done, if not more. They were spreading false rumors about me, and I was just retaliating by putting out their truth in front of the world. I honestly have half a mind to unarchive the videos once this mediation is done because they really deserve to be exposed. Their real faces should be known to everyone in the world. Update 3. So the court finalized the mediator for our negotiations today, and we were notified. My parents called me. I'd unblocked them for the time being for this conversation, to ask when exactly I was going to withdraw the suit because things were going out of hand now. I told them that that wasn't happening, and they completely blew a fuse. It was so chaotic on the call that I could barely understand what exactly they were trying to say to me, but I could make out that they were pissed off about it. There was a lot of incoherent screaming, so I hung up after a while. But then they called me right back, and it was my dad who told me that I was really pissing him off and that stunts like these weren't going to scare him. I fought right back and told them what I thought of them and let out all that I wanted to say. It was harsh but much needed, and I feel loads better after saying whatever I had to say to them. After that, I hung up without letting them have another chance to argue. But they still came after me. They called my aunt and told her that I was suing them for completely arbitrary reasons, which is not even true, and tried to manipulate her into feeling bad for them so she could persuade me to stop the proceedings. My aunt isn't a tough nut to crack anyway, and my parents had already used the "but we're family" card way too often in the past for it to be effective anymore. So she told them the same thing that I told her to say. She told them that she could give them her sympathy but nothing more, and if they bothered her anymore after this, then they would lose her sympathy as well, but she'd definitely report them to the cops for bothering her incessantly. So that was pretty cool of her. And after that, I didn't hear from them for quite a few hours until the evening. My parents had apparently contacted every single person in the family when their attempt to get my aunt on their side failed and told them that I was coming after them legally for no reason at all. So all of them started texting me the same thing. It was a poorly executed idea because it was very evident to me that they'd sent everyone a template text, but instead of switching it up a little, most people had just sent me the exact same message. So it became clear to me that my parents had put them up to this, hoping that they'd be able to change my mind. It's honestly sad how hard they're trying to fix this now that they know they're screwed. Update 4. The proceedings have officially begun. We're taking a break right now. I just finished lunch, and now I'm typing this out in the L. My parents were vicious, but they're very clearly losing this one, and they're going to have to agree to our terms if they want to avoid the court. When we broke for lunch, my dad was glaring daggers at me, and my mother was trying to console him like she was some helpless woman from a movie. But nobody was buying their act because we knew that's what it really was, an act. My friends/business partners have been very supportive and have been there for me every step of the way, which I'm really grateful for. Even just now, one of my buddies told me that he was there if I wanted to talk after this since he knew this was very emotionally heavy for me to deal with. And I'm honestly so incredibly grateful that in spite of such horrible parents, I was still blessed with great friends and an aunt who loves me. I'm very thankful for all that I have. Now on to the next story. Story 6. One of my employees had to take 2 days off of work because his father died. A week later, his dad walks into the store. I'm a manager at a shop that's 420 friendly for employees as long as it doesn't affect your work. We're all a big stoner family. We know who's capable of working high and who isn't. One of my employees is becoming a bit of a chronic liar. He's a bit of a performer, always doing impressions and generally being a pretty funny guy, but he's a bit of a slacker. I'll call him Scooby. One day, Scooby comes in uncharacteristically quiet, just looking sad and depressed. He was working slower than usual and not really responding to anybody in the middle of an otherwise busy kitchen. So he gets pulled outside and tells the owner of the store that his dad just died and he was reeling from it. He told him not to tell anybody because he's not the kind of person to spread his emotional baggage around. The owner and I gave him a hug, told him to go home and take as long as he needs. He comes back a couple of days later and everything seems all right. A few days later, a man walks into the store and asks to see Scooby. I was wondering if I could see Scooby. That's my son. You're his dad? Yeah, we look alike, don't we? They looked exactly alike. So now we're faced with the situation of this kid being a little liar. I pulled my boss, the owner, aside and asked him what to do. He told me that we're extremely short-handed right now and letting him go would be counterproductive because we're in the middle of training 3 people, and letting him go would force the more capable people to work 50+ hours a week. There's basically 2 to 3 of us plus the owners. He told me not to say anything to Scooby and that he and his wife would take care of it. A few weeks have passed now, and I no longer believe a word out of this kid's mouth. Apparently, the owners talked to him about his lying, but since then, it hasn't really stopped. He's taken off of work from vomiting all the time. At one point, he took 3 Fridays and 2 Saturdays off in a row because of all the vomiting and various digestion issues. He said he went to the doctor, and his doctor told him he was allergic to eggs, so he stopped eating eggs, and then he was okay. Meanwhile, I'll occasionally catch him eating a pre-packaged egg sandwich we bring for the employees for their lunch breaks. One time, he came in all sad and depressed again because his girlfriend broke up with him, and his productivity slowed down to a crawl. We told him to keep his personal drama at the door and sent him home that night. I see he and his girlfriend publicly snuggling all over my Facebook feed. I don't know what to do. I can't look this kid in the eye anymore, and my boss won't fire him. Do I just deal with it and keep letting this little shit look at me in my face and lie to me every time he wants to take off of work? Comments where OP has replied, OP, on talking to the owners about the matter. That's the thing, they already know about it all. It's impossible to lie to me, especially if I've already caught you in a lie. Then when you talk to me, my default position is that you're lying, and I'll go back in and logically catch people in lies. The kid's a terrible liar already, and when he talks to me, he's talking to the goddamn gatekeeper of truth. Not to toot my own horn or anything lol, but the only way it's affecting my work is that I would occasionally have to cover for him. But I told them that if this continues, they would have to cover for him because I'm tired of working 6-day weeks and having to come in at 3 a.m. on my day off to open the store because this dude's family are dropping like flies. I just don't know what to do as his boss. Commenter asked if there is an environment of fear and disapproval for asking for time off. Opie, yes, that's what I figured the crux of the issue was at first, but he needs to grow balls and ask for the time off if he really needs it. Unfortunately, he's asking for time off because he just doesn't want to work, and that's what seriously pisses me off about all of this. Just to rant a bit, I invited that shitty kid into my house to smoke some of my weed, telling him how sorry I was for his loss. I genuinely empathized with him, and then his dad walks into the store and he kept the lie up. He told everybody a different story. He told the bosses and I that that wasn't actually his father but his uncle, who he calls his father sometimes. It was bad, and he admits it by shutting up when called out on it, followed by nothing at all. We call him out and he falls silent, then he lies again the next day and the same shit happens. We embarrass him all the time about his constant lying, and I just don't understand why he keeps doing it. It must be some sort of psychological issue. Commenter asked if the kid can just be replaced. Opie, we're trying our best to train these new kids, but there's so little time. We've resorted to having people come in at 3 a.m. to dress donuts in a closed store for 3 hours until it opens, but it's really hard finding people with an availability of 3 a.m. to whenever the hell. Update 1, February 11th, 2015. So it's been about 2 months since I last posted about this incident. A lot of really crazy things have happened, so I'll jump right in. After everything happened with the last post, everybody simply put the dead dad incident in the back of their minds. They were pissed for a while, but they eventually let it go. I was the last one to let it go, but I eventually did. In retrospect, I shouldn't have because he never once owned up to the lie. He just acted like none of it ever happened. He tried to come up with lies to get out of working holiday shifts he was scheduled for Christmas/New Year, but nobody believed him, and he was told that if he didn't show up to these shifts that he'd be fired. He showed up to the Christmas shift, but he overslept through the New Year shift. Nobody cared because we ended up not needing him for the shift anyway, and one of the new guys ended up covering for him on call. Everybody was pissed at him again, and he's been on thin ice ever since then. Shit hit the fan in the past few days. A couple of days ago, his apparently psycho girlfriend caught him hanging out in a car with one of our mutual coworkers. She had an absolute breakdown and started pounding on her window. Scooby hops out of the car to calm her down, and the coworker, Sky, drives off. The psycho girlfriend gets in her car and keeps trying to cut Sky off in traffic. At least that's the story I heard from my boss. She eventually lets up. Sky manages to get home safe and texted Scooby basically cussing him out. Later that night, I make a quick stop by the store owner's house to pick something up for the store, and they tell me that Scooby called them and told them that he wouldn't be able to work for the next few days because he got into a big fight with his girlfriend and she slashed his tires. The next morning, I show up for my shift, and Scooby calls the store. His speech is all slow, mumbled, and he's slurring his words. I immediately think he's strung out on something. He brags about doing acid and other hardish drugs. He tells me this story about how the night before, after his girlfriend slashed his tires, she calmed down, and they were walking around where they live in some warehouse district somewhere, apparently looking for a store to grab money so they can call a tow truck to come get his car. While walking, he and his girlfriend got mugged. He's fine, but they beat her up pretty badly and took all their money. Because of this, he wouldn't be able to work for the next few days, which is Valentine's Day, our busiest day of the year by far. Nobody even wanted to speak to him at that point, so it all came down to this morning. The owner comes in, and I asked her if anyone has spoken to Scooby. Basically, she pulled a string, and his entire wall of lies came crumbling down. I can't make this shit up. So yesterday afternoon, Scooby calls the store with a disguised voice and asks for one of our coworkers, Ashley, who you can read all about here. We have a really dysfunctional family. He asks for her and tells her to meet him out the back of the store with his paycheck that was left for him at the cash register. He did this so that he could avoid having to talk to the owner. Well, she caught wind of it and showed up out back of the store with his paycheck, but he noticed and literally ran away. He shows up about a half hour later with fresh scratches on his neck because apparently, when you get mugged by a group of guys, they scratch your neck. She confronted him about all of it, told him that she doesn't believe a word he ever says, and that she loves him and wishes he'd stop making terrible decisions. By the end of the conversation, he basically admitted to all of the lies, and he was finally fired. And thus is the tale of Scooby, the wandering liar. Final comments from Opie. Opie on Scooby. He's the kind of liar where he's so interested in perspective that he thinks his outlandish lies are going to fool anybody. It baffled me. I never knew how this dude was ever getting through his life, but I found out a few things over the course of him working there that proved that he was just a pillar of bad decisions. That was Scooby's trademark. He got arrested a month ago and was put in jail because he fessed up to some shoplifting that his girlfriend did. He was already on probation from some other shit, but he got off on a legal technicality and got off light, but being in jail for 2 days didn't do anything to help Scooby get his shit together. His parents kicked him out of his house, and he's been floating between his girlfriend's house and his ex-girlfriend's house when he and his current girlfriend are fighting. I know, this sounds like a bad soap opera, and none of us understands why he's letting himself be put into this situation. He needs his ass kicked by someone who cares about him because he's going down a really bad road. Scooby running from the owner. Apparently, he saw her before she got back there, ran behind the wall, ran around the corner to his car before she came through the back door. She saw him fly out of the parking lot in his non-tire car that he spent hours using as an excuse to get out of work. Opie. When asked why a donut shop is busy on Valentine's Day, who knows? It just happened that way. For the past 2 years the shop has been opened. People like to be creative with their Valentine's Day gifts, so they get donuts instead of flowers and chocolates. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Caught my narcissistic sister admitting that she fabricated cheating allegations about my fiancé to ruin our wedding. This is Mabel, 28F, and I really want to seek some advice from all of you. It's about my older sister, Diana, 30F. Sit tight because you're in for a ride. It's May 14th, and it was supposed to be my wedding day, but things happened. One of them was that my sister lied about my fiancé having an affair with her. Shocking, right? That a sister could do that to her own blood. Before you begin to have so many ideas, let me tell you a little bit about my sister, Diana. She's the family's bad apple that fell from the tree. I grew up hearing my parents, most especially my mother, complain so much about her. Some days it could be her grades in school. Other times it could be how she was dressed and so on. Since she was the elder one, she considered herself to be the entitled one, right from childhood. She had set some ground rules in the house that she had the first right over everything. As a younger daughter, I was used to playing with Diana's toys and wearing her clothes, but she continued to be the narcissistic child, even as a grown-up adult. Diana was never good at academics. She dropped out of school midway. She also had a thing for money, so she had multiple boyfriends who would cater to her expensive needs. Diana struggled to choose the right career path for her. I never blamed Diana for being confused about her path in life because I knew that not everyone has clarity in their life. My parents bugged her about various things she could go into, but she saw it more as a threat and as a way to compare the two of us. I initially thought my parents were being too harsh on her. She just needed a little bit of love and, well, guidance. But I see Diana now, and I think maybe they were right. On the other hand, I was always an understanding child, as per my mom. I was an average student in school, but I was interested in fashion. I used to look up designs online and try to replicate them on my own. My father was the first to notice my liking for fashion. In my senior year, he pushed me to do something about it, and I applied to fashion school. Kickstarted my career. I moved out of my house and started living independently after my last year in college. I moved from Seattle to New York, the Big Apple, to meet the right people, but most importantly, to find a new environment. After I moved, my parents pestered Diana to take her life seriously. Tired of my mother's ramblings, Diana left the house and showed up at my door. It was all a shock to me when I woke up one morning and there she was, standing at my door with her things. She is my sister, older for that matter. I cannot abandon my family when they need me. Guess I was the only one who thought family was important. Diana did not chase any endeavors or try to put herself out there for a job. Instead, she would spend the entire day at home watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians reruns. At night, She would go clubbing or restaurant hopping with her new superficial, fancy friends. It was ridiculous. I tried to subtly tell her that she needed to be financially independent and to stop thinking that I would always be there to provide her with every need of money. I wasn't her only source of income. Her rich, on and off boyfriend, Frederick, was also present to always help her out. I say on and off again because they are something. Initially, I thought she had moved in to get rid of our parents, but the actual reason was her boyfriend, Frederick. His father's company was opening a new outlet in New York. Hence, he moved so that he could take care of it. Of course, my pushover sister couldn't leave him alone, so she followed him. However, Frederick was living in his company's quarters where Diana couldn't go, or else Frederick would be reported to his father. So she had no option but to show up at my door. It's more than 2 years since she's been freeloading at my house, but the actual problem which brought me here is my fiancé Lucas. See, I have always thought that I would be unlucky in love. This is probably because I have been hit with heartbreak from left to right. It started with my boyfriend in high school who used me for popularity and never took me seriously. My boyfriend in college was not good enough either. He took solace in other women's underwear. I crave love, especially seeing how my parents were. The support, unconditional love, and everything else. I wanted it in New York. Everywhere I looked, I saw couples happy, thrilled to bask in each other's presence. But for me, I was all alone amidst all. I met Lucas, 30M. He was the sweetest of them all, the most beautiful, the smart artist. I was immediately intrigued by those honest eyes. We maintained eye contact for a while, hoping that someone would smile. It wasn't the first time meeting a hot, gorgeous guy. It was in New York. We had handsome men swimming around the city, but I wasn't interested, mainly because half of them were not good for me and only wanted sex. Lucas and I conversed first about our sibling stories before he walked up to me. I was going through the grocery list Diana had written, and she had put down half of the world for me to buy. She had added some fancy items which literally twisted my tongue to pronounce. Lucas caught me talking to myself and immediately chuckled. He explained that he was also going through the same thing with his younger sister, Ellie, 16F, who was in high school. He was shopping for women's items. I had thought it was for a girlfriend, but it was for his sister, Ellie. He accompanied me to do the rest of my grocery. As we spoke more about how adulthood is not great, he had offered to pay for my items, but I couldn't accept them. Darn it, I'm just too independent. He had also disclosed that Ellie had suffered an assault last year and grew a fear of the public afterward. Lucas was trying to be there for her. He let her come live with him because she felt unsafe at their parents' place. I was impressed. Lucas and I had so much in common. We were both parents to our siblings, and there it started, the whirlwind of romance. I had almost forgotten how beautiful it was to have someone love you, love every part of you. Lucas was just that kind of person. On May 23rd of last year, we started dating. It was the most effortless relationship I had, but it was hard for Diana to get along with Lucas. She would give unwelcome comments about anything involving him. Lucas did his best to be nice to her by getting her favorite chocolate and even a designer bag, knowing she loved fancy items. Diana did not care. I eventually called Diana out on her disrespectful behavior toward Lucas. She explained that she was just worried she would lose me to him. She was just feeling insecure. She was worried about how life would be for her if I was more serious with Lucas. She knew that we were gradually getting serious. I told her I loved her dearly and promised nothing would make me abandon her. That's what I thought. I thought my sister would carry the same love and respect I had for her. But no. A few months later, Lucas proposed to me. I said yes. I told him a million yes. The engagement was set. My best friend, Bonnie, 30F, had taken the part of a wedding planner because she was an expert on me. Everyone was pleased that I had found the right one, including my mom, who initially thought I would end up with millions of cats. Joke's on her. I have found the right one. Little did I know that the happiness would not last. Diana had cooked up a dubious plan to cut off my engagement. I got to Lucas's apartment, ready for us to go cake tasting with Bonnie, but what I saw was crazy. Lucas had his hands all over my sister. It seemed he was trying to kiss her, and Diana wanted to let go of him. Diana was distraught. She was pulled away and slapped him in the face. Lucas was apparently drunk, or rather woozy. In tears, Diana had explained that she wanted to make amends with Lucas for how she treated him during family dinner. Lucas had been showing advances toward Diana. Diana said she wanted Lucas to stop doing it and respect our relationship. She also showed me the handwritten letters that Lucas had sent her. I read one of them, and it was full of debaucherous behavior. Lucas had fantasized about her body and wanted to desperately sleep with her. He had written, "I love you with all of my heart. If you could only see that I want your body next to mine. I hope that marrying your sister will give way for our romance to build up. God, I want that body there." I believe Diana had no reason to lie. I stormed out of the apartment. Bonnie had told me to reconsider my attempts to break up and listen to him when he sobered up. I agreed. I needed to hear his own side of the story. He had shown up at the house after I had refused to respond to his messages and calls. The first thing I gave him was a slap to the face. I later threw the letters addressed to Diana in his face. I hated that he feigned innocence. After he read them, his face turned red, and he denied having sent those letters to Diana. He said that Diana unexpectedly showed up at his apartment with a bottle of wine and some dessert, which he didn't remember. She told Lucas that she wanted to mend their relationship since we were getting married, and it was her gesture for a new bond. Lucas happily agreed, and they both drank from that wine bottle. Lucas said it was jinxed and he realized it in the first sip, but Diana insisted that it was an original, homemade wine that her friend had gifted her. So Lucas didn't bother and drank it all. He said that after a glass, he quite doesn't remember what happened next, except some hazy shadow where Diana forced him to finish the bottle and made him feel her body. He said that although he had almost passed out, but tried to stop Diana, who overpowered him after a while, and he doesn't remember what happened next. I rolled my eyes and told him I wasn't falling for his so-called victim story. Lucas pleaded and pleaded for me to reconsider. I was done. Diana's plan had worked. I broke up my engagement with him. Lucas pleaded one last time that I listen to him, and I swore that my sister was the most essential part of my life. Little did I know what was the true story. Lucas was relentless with his calls and text messages. He never ceased to let me know the truth. He still maintained the stance that he had nothing to do with my sister. I just wanted to heal. It was impossible to do so. Everyone asked me what had happened between Lucas and me. I could have easily said that Lucas was only using me to get to my sister, but I was not the type to tarnish someone's image. It wasn't my place to do so. The society would find out on their own what had happened. Lucas eventually stopped reaching out, and I heard he had taken a trip to clear his head. A part of me wanted him to plead that I forget everything that happened. I knew it was not possible. I wasn't the kind to give second chances anymore. A few weeks later, Diana began to undergo troubles of her own. Diana's boyfriend, Frederick, was a pompous fool. Although they had been going on and off, I knew my sister seriously loved him, despite her attempts to try to hook up with someone else or to meet another person. Despite him, he was always the one for her. You know, the kind of couple that yell at each other 1 second and start to make out like animals. They would throw things at each other, scream, cry, but I knew that they were meant to be. It was just that kind of relationship. I was already used to it. This time it was getting too toxic, and I'm glad it was because I finally knew the truth. One fateful night, I was just nursing my heartbreak by drinking with Bonnie. We heard Diana yelling at Frederick that she needed a ring on her finger. He had responded that he was not getting married anytime soon and would not be pressured because of her. She expressed that she was tired of living with me and wanted her own house. By her own house, she meant her husband's. Basically, the conversation went like this. Frederick cried out, "Oh, I thought you loved your sister." Diana responded, "Of course I do." Frederick gave back, "Oh, such love that you ruined her chances of happiness." At that point, guys, I was intrigued. I wanted to know what he was talking about. I thought about coming out of hiding to ask him what he meant, but Bonnie gave me a signal to stay right in my hiding spot. Diana had responded to her crazy boyfriend, "Oh, please. That man could not ever make her happy." Diana went crazy and increased her voice. "I don't care if he wanted to give her the world. I am the one meant to get married early. I am the one who is old enough." Just because she has a house and a career doesn't mean she deserves to have something that I cannot have. Like, what is wrong with this girl? At that point, I needed to come out. It sounded as though my sister had been resentful towards me. Where did all this malice come from? Despite Bonnie's attempts to hold me back, I moved away from the door and barged in. Frederick's face was red, and my sister's hypocritical. She had tried to pull up a wry smile. Frederick glanced at Diana, waiting for her to explain. Diana was shaking at first, then flipped like a demon possessed her. A jealous, selfish monster. That's when I was convinced that she had done something sketchy. I glanced back at Diana, who had a frown on her face but had no words coming out of her mouth. Frederick let the news known. Diana had lied about Lucas and the fact that he had sent those personal letters. I was livid, especially when Frederick said he had paid a sketch artist to forge Lucas's handwriting to write those letters. Diana pounced on Frederick immediately. He pushed her back and revealed how Diana begged him to help her break my engagement. Usually, I would try to separate both of them, but I could care less. I had been living a facade. My sister was not an angel, and I had just let go of the man I loved for her. I had bombarded her with questions. It almost turned physical. She yelled that she did not care much about me or my life. She had only been using me because she could not do anything with her life. I chased both of them out of my house. Frederick left the house immediately, but this spoiled princess refused to leave. The neighbors were already peeping from their windows, hearing our screams. To save me from trouble, Bonnie took me to her place a few blocks away. It's been a week since then. I have almost flooded Bonnie's house with my tears. Meanwhile, Bonnie picked up my essentials from my apartment and insisted I stay with her for a few weeks. She has taken work from home to spend time with me. I'm not sure if Diana has left the house or not, but seriously, at this point, I don't have the energy to deal with her. In fact, I don't care about her right now. I'm worried about how I get back Lucas after I did it to him. I didn't think an apology would work. Any advice is highly appreciated. Update 1. Guys, you would not believe it. On days like this, I wished I was a crazy person that could react harshly. You know how they say people feel bad about their actions? It's actually a lie. Diana did not care once about how I felt. Bonnie said that she always knew that Diana had malicious intentions for me. She did try to caution me but didn't say anything outrightly because of the immense sisterly love I had. It hurt that I was the only one who felt that way. The first thing I wanted to do after hearing about the betrayal was to get Lucas back. Bad luck hit again. Lucas was in the company of a woman I recognized as his ex. He had spoken a lot about the woman. They could never be together because of her parents' problems. It seemed as though they were reconciling. I told Lucas about all of my sister's schemes and apologized profusely. Lucas understood. I didn't believe him, but he claimed he needed space away from me. Word had gotten out that he was playing the two, well, sisters, and there was a lot of discrimination in town. He needed to heal. I didn't know what that meant, but something told me he would move on to bigger and better things. I was back in square one without a partner. I know I might sound evil, but I don't care. I feel vindictive. I want Diana to suffer in the same way as I did. Although she moved out of the house when I returned from Bonnie's place, I want to destroy her. Update 2. Okay, I guess I have to start this with an apology. I've been going through a lot. Last month was the day I was supposed to get married to Lucas, who is now seeking healing. For days, I've been wallowing in my sadness. I had ignored calls from my workers, Bonnie, and everyone. My pillows were constantly tear-soaked and Diana, she had barged into my apartment last week asking for money for her shopping spree. A shopping spree while my life was practically ruined. Where was her humanity? She said that whatever money she had saved from the pocket money I gave her, she had paid for her motel rent, and now she wanted money for shopping and the rest of the things. She maintained that crazy entitlement. She needed to be taught a lesson. I had thought about a million ways to pay my sister for her wickedness. Nothing serious comes to mind. Then I thought about one thing, money. Money was what went around in Diana's world. That's why she wanted to get married. She wanted to have the best clothes and styles in the world. She didn't care if the world was ending. The money in her account was all that was important. So I cut her off. God, you should have seen her when I said I was cutting her off. She screamed like a child who was having a tantrum. Diana did not give up. She had tried to get money from my bank account to cash a check. I was quicker. I called the bank to restrict her from getting money. Diana didn't plead. For the first time, she still maintained her pride. I decided to give her a taste of her medicine. She claimed she needed the money to pay for something important. She said she had broken up with Frederick and had no one else but me who could help her. The act of providing for her ended. My older sister, who was meant to be with me, support me, and take care of me, she had ruined my life. She broke up my engagement just because she wanted to get married first. She barged out of the house, fuming in anger. After a week, she again showed up. She was much more sober this time and pleaded with me to help her. She said she was so desperate for money that she tried reconciling with Frederick. However, Frederick called it quits because he had apparently found love with someone else. I wanted Diana to feel half of what I felt. Diana pleaded that he reconsider and think about the years that they had been together. He eventually left her. Seeing Diana in pain about losing the one person she loved gave me no joy, but it was good karma. What goes around comes around. Diana pleaded. It was the first time I had seen her beg so much. I was concerned. Was it just a front? She broke down in front of me while narrating her breakup. She asked me if she could move in with me again. I told her that I could not support her in any way after what she had done to me. She tried to emotionally blackmail me into thinking that I was her last resort and that she would have to sleep on the streets on an empty stomach if I didn't rescue her. I handed over some grants to her and told her that was it. I could do for her for the sake of humanity. I still didn't forgive her. Neither will I be able to forgive her until I move on. It's been a month since I met her last. Last week, my mom called me. I told her everything that Diana had done to me, and she apologized to me on Diana's behalf. She said that Diana was getting what she deserved. She is currently working as a saleswoman in a showroom, and her boss is giving her a hard time in her life. Of course, no one wants a lazy employee, right? As for me, I don't know when I'll be able to move on, if at all. Wish me luck. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My fiancé wants to end our relationship because I didn't choose him first. I'm sorry if this whole thing sounds a little rushed, but my fiancé Ryan, who I've been with for 7 years, told me today that he's not sure whether he wants to be with me anymore. And I realize it may sound stupid, but I love him so much it feels like my world is falling apart around me. I don't know what I can do. This all started a couple days ago when we were celebrating our anniversary. We invited a bunch of people, including one of my closest friends, Ellie. She noticed my fiancé being affectionate towards me and made some stupid comment about how she told me so that I would be better for me than my ex, Andy. My fiancé was a little confused and asked Ellie what she meant. Back when I was in college, Andy and Ryan both asked me out to the same event. I'd known Ryan since high school and we'd always had a thing, but we weren't a couple. On top of that, he went to another college that was a half-hour drive away from me. Andy went to my college, his dorm was a 5-minute walk away, and he was someone completely new. I began to feel like my relationship with Ryan wouldn't be exciting enough because we already knew almost everything about each other, with the added headache of being half an hour away from each other. Despite Ellie's protests, I decided to go with Andy. I know my reasoning is beyond stupid, but I never thought that this decision had the potential to blow up my future. Ryan was already hurt that I declined his request to go on a date. I didn't want to make him feel worse by telling him that I was going with someone else. Not that it mattered because he stopped talking to me for about 6 months. During this time, it became obvious that me and Andy weren't right for each other, so we ended it. When me and Ryan began talking again, I realized how much I missed him and that he was perfect for me. So I asked him out. He was overjoyed, and that's how we got to this point. For the rest of the party, I could tell that his mood was off. He kept pulling away from my kisses and touches and responded to me with short, one-sentence answers. After the party, when I asked him what was wrong, he just said that he felt sick. For the next 2 days, he continued to be cold and distant. I had no idea what was happening, so I waited patiently for him to become comfortable enough to tell me. Today, he told me the reason he'd been acting off. From the story, It sounded like I had kept him as my backup or plan B in case my relationship with Andy failed, and that it was especially messed up since we'd obviously had feelings for each other long before then. He also said that he deserved to be someone's first choice. I thought that this was just an insecurity that we could get through, but then he went on to say that he's not sure whether he can see our relationship in the same light anymore, so it might be best if we split up. I pleaded with him that we don't need to take it that far and that we should go to counseling or even just live separate for a few days while he thinks about whether this is what he actually wants. So far, he hasn't said anything except that he absolutely refuses to go to therapy. I can tell that this is weighing on him heavily because he's been drinking more than usual, but I don't know what to say to make him feel better. We've had a beautiful relationship. He's never been overly jealous or possessive, and although neither of us are perfect, I couldn't ask for a more loving, respectful, intelligent, and charming soon-to-be husband. I don't understand how all of that could come to an end for a foolish mistake that I made 7 years ago. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for by posting on here, but if anyone has any advice, please let me know. TLDR. My fiancé found out that I chose to date someone else in college before him, says that he doesn't want to be my backup relationship, and that it might be best if we go our separate ways. Edit. I think I may have messed up on my wording. He doesn't care that I dated someone else before him. It bothers him that I had the choice between him or Andy and I chose Andy. Update 1. So a few people have asked for an update. It's been a little over 2 weeks now, so I'm not sure if anyone is even interested anymore. I think for now I'm just confused about what's happening. If anyone has any advice or has some idea of what he's thinking, please tell me. After what happened in the last post, he said that we should put off the wedding while we decide how to proceed. That means something, right? He used the exact words, put off, instead of cancel, and while we decide how to proceed. I think that means he hasn't decided that we should break up yet. Maybe he'll just decide not to marry but to continue our relationship. I don't think he's ready to give up our relationship yet, but he's moved into a hotel. I know some people have told me to give him space, but I've decided that even if a part of him is willing to stay with me, I'm going to do everything I can to give me another chance. I've been dropping off food, leaving notes under his door, and we've been calling every day, sometimes twice a day. Right now, we're both stuck in limbo. Most of the time we talk about how much we miss each other, the plans we had, and me convincing him that he's my soulmate and that regardless of whatever happened with Andy, I know we would have ended up together. Then there are other moments where he calls in the middle of the night, having obviously been crying, and asking questions like, what did he have that I didn't? Did you love him? Was he better in bed? Was he better looking than me? Do you still think he's better looking than me? What does more exciting mean? Do you wish he gave you another chance? He says that he wants to be with me desperately, but when he thinks about me, it's seared into his mind that I was always his first choice, but he will always have been my second. It hurts him that we had feelings for each other all the way through high school, but the moment I met Andy, none of that meant anything anymore, which must have meant I thought Andy was worth my time and he wasn't. It breaks my heart to hear him holding back his tears and trying to cry silently, but I swear I'll do anything to save our relationship, and part of that means not hiding anything from him. I've begged him to reconsider going to therapy, but he absolutely will not budge. Some of our mutual friends are saying that they're not sure if he'll recover from this, but I don't care. He hasn't told me to stop trying, so I'm not going to. I wish to God that I could go back and change the past because I love him more than anything, including myself. It feels like I'm in some sort of surreal nightmare. Less than a month ago, we were laying in bed fighting over which of us got to name our kids. And now a seemingly insignificant mistake that I made 7 years ago might wipe away the beautiful future I want with Ryan. All I can do right now is be there and hope that he can give me another chance, but I don't know what he's thinking. I know this isn't a common relationship problem, but if anyone has anything they can give me, whether it's advice or even reassurance that things are going to work out, please tell me. Edit, he called an hour ago. Some of his friends found this Reddit post and showed it to him, so he called angry, asking why I would tell strangers about our personal problems and how is he supposed to face his friends and family now after they all know that the only reason I'm with him is because Andy broke up with me. After reading the comments, he realized that it wasn't right for him to keep me in the dark for so long without making a decision. He's decided that we should go our separate ways so that I can decide whether it really is him that I want to be with and that he wasn't just the convenient choice. For now, I can't describe how I'm feeling. It's like I'm so tired. I just want to go to sleep forever. I know some of you have the impression that he's a horrible man, but this was just a small fragment of our relationship and doesn't reflect who he is as an individual in the slightest. He's the guy who spent days learning about my major on top of his own studies so that he could help me study for exams and proofread my coursework. He spent thousands of his own hard-earned money to give my parents their dream vacation to Australia and insisted that I say I paid for it because they'd feel bad taking money from him. When my ex threatened to leak nudes that I'd sent him when we were together, I was terrified that he would leave. He took me out to my favorite restaurant and said that there was nothing anyone else could do or say that would ever affect how much he loves me. And then he asked me to marry him so I'd never have to worry about him leaving ever again. My fiancé is the best man that I've ever known, and the assumptions that everyone here has made from hearing about such a small part of our lives is disgusting. And I didn't come here for people to convince me that he's immature, insecure, or any of that. I should have known better than to post here, but all I can hope for now is that he sees this. To my fiancé, I don't know what I can say to make this better, and I don't know if you'll be able to heal from this. What I can say is that you are wrong in thinking that I chose you out of convenience. I chose you because you're the most thoughtful, handsome, intelligent, and charming man that I've ever known. Every single moment that we've had together for the last 7 years, every kiss that we've shared, every bagel that we've split, and every I love you that I've said was meant for you and was an affirmation that you are and always will be my first choice. I don't believe that you want to cut our lives together short. I think that you were trying to heal from the consequences of a mistake that I made, and then I inadvertently set a fire underneath you by forcing you to come to a decision by making this post. Take as long as you need to do whatever it is that you need to do to heal from this, and I'll be here waiting for when you're ready to talk. If you decide that this is something that we cannot overcome, I would accept your decision, but I know we are stronger than this. I love you so much. Edit 2. I know this is starting to get really long, but he read my open letter and got in contact with me to say that he's not promising anything except that he'll listen. He still refuses to see a therapist because he doesn't view our relationship as strong enough that there's anything to salvage right now. However, some people here have expressed that they wish they could give him advice directly, and I've convinced him to talk to others who have experienced this and healed from it. If you've experienced something similar, please ask for his throwaway either in your response to this post or by PMing me. Thank you. Final update. Before I get into the update, I want to say that I asked my ex-fiancé before posting this, and he said it's fine as long as I don't give away any details that could reveal us to more of our friends and family. I've always been the type of person who values other people's input when it comes to making big decisions, and he knows that. A lot has happened since the last update. After we spoke, he went completely quiet for around 2 weeks for time to think. The waiting was almost unbearable, but he promised that as soon as he had an answer for me, he would contact me. I wasn't allowed to come to his hotel to drop off food, try to see him, or any sort of contact. When he finally called, the first thing that he established was that our relationship was over. However, despite our relationship ending, he still wants to be with me if I still want to be with him. We can restart our relationship completely from the beginning with the board wiped clean. In his own words, while you look back at our relationship and see something wonderful, I look back at it in disgust because you lied by omission every single day. Initially, I was ready to agree on the spot, but he insisted that I take the week to decide whether I really want this. His logic is that if I choose to restart our relationship from the beginning now, he will be my first choice. Later on in the week, it began to settle what this would mean. I would go from fiancé back to girlfriend. I don't know when he is going to propose again. I don't want children until we're married, so I don't know how long that's going to be. In short, it would completely throw off the life plans we had. I asked for a little more time, and he doesn't want me to resent him in the future, so agreed to give me as much time as I needed to come to a decision. This is a better outcome than I expected and maybe better than I deserve, but I would be lying if I said that I don't wish things could go back to normal. I've decided that I'm going to agree to starting over. It just really hurts that the past 7 years don't mean anything anymore. Not long ago, we celebrated our 7th anniversary, but this time next year, we'll be celebrating our first anniversary again. TLDR. He broke up with me but gave me the option of starting over with a new relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend that would rectify my mistake and make him my first choice. I've had some time to think, and I've decided that I'm going to agree. Edit. He read the post and wanted to address some of the comments. If we do restart our relationship, he won't hold anything over my head. It'll be exactly as he said, and our relationship would start over completely. He's so confident of this that he insists I leave him if he ever slips up and brings it up when we argue. Some people have said that being first is just an arbitrary construct, but that doesn't mean anything. Marriage is a construct, monogamy is a construct, etc. Something being a construct doesn't make it any less real or capable of inflicting pain. A reminder that this isn't about me dating people before him. He doesn't care about that. He cares that I knew him for years, that we had a bond in high school, and that he waited until we were in college so we could officially be a couple, but I picked someone else I barely knew. It's come up very often that the length of our relationship should have some influence over his decisions. He says it does because it makes it even worse. I never told him about what happened during those 6 months while we were together. On top of that, I wasn't the one to tell him in the end. We know everything about each other, so he can only assume that I consciously hid it from him. I'm not insecure, fragile, or irrational. The fact is that our old relationship is now ruined in my eyes. It's ruined because she took away my ability to make an informed decision 7 years ago. If I had known the circumstances of her return, I'm not afraid to say that I would have told her to go FK herself. Now I'm giving her the option to restart our relationship with me knowing all the facts. This time will be equals. Now on to the next story. Story 9. I caught my wife cheating with her boss's husband. So, I'm married to her ex-best friend. My wife, 27F, and I, 24M, met at the Burning Man Festival. At the time, I had just graduated college and started a full-time job in Nevada. She lived and worked in Colorado. When we got to talking, I realized I never wanted to stop talking to her. I felt myself falling for her and wishing we lived closer. We exchanged numbers and started talking as soon as the festival ended. Really, she texted me even before I reached my car. We maintained a long-distance relationship for a year before she asked me to move in with her. I found a job in her state and packed my bags. It was only another year before I bought a house and proposed to her. Neither of us had more than 2 family members that kept in touch, so we had a small wedding ceremony with them. Our marriage was just what I wanted and expected it to be. I was convinced I had met the coolest, most suitable and exciting woman I could find. I wanted to love her forever, and she said the same to me. Before I moved in with her, she wasn't a very tidy person, but she made it a goal of hers to keep a clean, organized home for us. By the time we moved into our house, she was a wonderful housekeeper and a woman worthy of being a wife. She also really enjoyed her full-time job working for a boss that was also her best friend. I heard a lot of great things about Tiffany. They met in college and remained close until Tiffany's business was well enough off the ground that she could hire people. My wife was there for her and proved herself to be an excellent employee. Since my wife was there from the start, she made a generous salary. I never met Tiffany, but my wife and her went out together every once in a while to blow off work steam. They'd say, about 4 years after we were married, I noticed my wife was holding her phone a lot more than she used to. She started holding on to it or keeping it in her pockets. I seriously doubted this meant anything bad because my wife was still just as sweet and attentive as she always was. Looking back on it, she might have been even more sweet and attentive than usual. On one ordinary Friday evening, she texted me that she was going out with Tiffany. I replied that I would meet my brother for dinner and see her at home by 9. I left the house to meet him, but he canceled plans. I returned home and went straight to the bathroom before turning any lights on. While I was in there, I heard the front door open and 2 voices. I turned off the bathroom light and listened. I heard my wife giggle and open the back sliding door. Then I heard a man's voice. I watched them from within the shadows of the house. They stripped off their clothes and jumped in the pool. They frolicked and splashed around for a bit before they started making out and having sex. I grabbed the man's pants, found his wallet and took his ID. His last name sounded familiar. I got in my car and drove to his house. I knocked on the door and was greeted by a gorgeous woman. I handed her her husband's ID and told her what he was doing at my house with my wife. She didn't want to believe it at first, but as it sunk in and she became devastated, she started cursing and grabbing anything of his to throw out. Inside, she invited me to wait with her inside for him to return home. I didn't really want to, but I also didn't want to go home, so we waited. He arrived home, and his wife handed him his ID. He was confused, and even more so when I stepped forward. I told him I found that in his wallet, in his pants, after he stripped for my wife. His jaw dropped, and he just looked between us before getting frustrated and embarrassed, asking what was going to happen now. His wife kicked him out right in front of me. I wanted to leave, but she took a moment from yelling to ask me to stay. Once he was out of the house, she sat down with me and apologized for what happened on behalf of her husband and my wife. We got to talking, and it didn't take long for me to realize this was Tiffany. This was my wife's best friend and boss. I freaked out and told her who my wife was. She could not believe it. She called my wife and told her she needed her to come over right away. When she got there, we both confronted her, telling her she just cheated on me with her best friend's husband. My wife freaked out, crying, swearing that she didn't know he was her husband. She looked at me and pleaded for me to believe that this was just a meaningless mistake. She said they had met at a bar and that he wasn't wearing a ring. I asked her when and why she was even at a bar alone, but then I said it didn't matter, and it didn't matter how sorry she was because she still willingly brought another man into my house and slept with him. Tiffany said even if my wife didn't know he was her husband, she was not the kind of friend or employee she needed in her life. My wife was broken in that instant. She didn't know what to do with herself. She just kept pleading with empty words. I told her to move out of my house. Tiffany invited me back inside. She screamed after us and even banged on the door. Eventually, she was moved out of my house and the divorce was final. She was a huge waste of my time, but if it weren't for her, I never would have met my current wife of 12 years, Tiffany. Our exes didn't stay together after this. Their relationship was based entirely on fleeting emotions, infatuation, and excitement. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My girlfriend asked to an open relationship and I just pointed her to the door. So like the title says, my 43M GF36F asked that we open the relationship, and I just pointed her to the door. It was too much. I strongly believe that in a monogamous relationship, when someone asks to open it, well, it's because that person saw something else out there and is ready to try it instead of working in the relationship. Basically, is blindsiding her partner. So I have been with Fran, 36, over the last 2 years and a half, almost 2 as a couple. I thought that things were moving smoothly and was about to ask her to move in at the beginning of April. But lately she was acting rather distant, so I decided to wait a little and watch. I was cheated on in the past, so I'm a little cautious with some signs. Out of nowhere, this last Friday, she asked me to open the relationship. She gave me all her big speech, and when she ended her presentation, I asked her if she has someone in mind because it's not like we decided today and basically going out with other persons tomorrow. Basically, I tricked her into telling me what I already knew, and yes, she has someone in mind, which means to me that either she already did it or she has all set up. So I got up, walked around the apartment while she was trying to sell that this could be good for both us and our relationship. By the time she ended talking, I handed her one of my sport bags with all her stuff in it and told her to leave the spare key over the table on her way out, that we are done and she knows why. Then I went to the couch and turned on the TV, just trying to look indifferent and save face. She was speechless for a while, about to cry, but before she couldn't say something, I told her that I didn't want to talk about anything and she should leave. As soon as she left, I felt like crap. So unworthy. Cried a little, and as right now I'm still mourning. My phone is going almost nuclear with the calls and texts I received from friends of both sides about my extreme reaction over her simple request. Don't know what she told them. So now I'm sitting wondering if I really went overboard and at the same time fighting the urge to run back to her because deep inside, even knowing my feelings for her are still there, the trust is gone, and I'm not going to spend all my time watching her movements. It's not healthy. Maybe in time, really don't know. Before anyone pointed out, yes, I know my reaction is pure reflection of me, not what she did or was about to do or could do. So did I went overboard? P.S. Sorry about my English. Keep that in mind if you don't understand something on my redaction. Update 1. First of all, thanks for all the replies and upvotes. It never crossed my mind that this post would have this much attention. I just write it to put order in my ideas and vent a little, and with the hope a few people told me if I went overboard, but I didn't expected the amount of replies I got. So many thanks to all for that. Some people pointed that maybe I went overboard, that maybe she wasn't aware of my position on the subject. I replied to some, but there were too many comments to get back to all. So, to clarify, maybe a year back approaches we had a couple of friends in a similar situation, and for like a month, that was the main theme of conversation on our group of friends, and every time I said that for me is a big no, and if one person in a relationship needs to be with other persons, well, she should leave. About that, the friends trying to mend things up, well, they weren't totally aware of the situation. Yesterday, after I posted here and with my ideas more defined, went to see a group of them and told them my point. All of them agree with me at different levels. Some of them wanted to let it go, others wanted to burn her at the stake. Of course, a few girls in the group pointed that I could do things in a better way, and also there was a few question about if could consider give her another chance, but for me, the main issue is not feelings. I know that I love her, but the trust is gone, and I don't want to find myself wondering all the time what is she up to. After I left, my friends talked to other persons that weren't there, and basically the waters have calmed. If you are wondering what is she doing, really don't know. I got a few texts from her but haven't read it yet and don't think it will do it soon. Anyway, I know is not much, but this is all I got for now. Note: when I first joined this part of Reddit, I didn't get what people get here by posting their relationship troubles, but I do get it now. Update 2. Hello to every stranger interested in how things ended. I wasn't much on the idea about posting any other update, but some people have been asking, so here it is. Finally, after listening to various friends and some Reddit users, I talked to her just to sort things out. Last Friday, we meet at our regular place where we take coffee. At the distance, she looked great. So great that I just wanted to say it and drag her back to my place. It took a lot of restraint to not do it. When I got close to her, I noticed her sadness, and she still has her eyes irritated from crying. We sat, and before she could say a word, I asked her to tell me the entire story and that please don't let anything out of it that I needed, and then I would ask her a few things and also needed all the TR. The story is pretty basic. Around 2 months before she asked for the open relationship, on her girls' dancing night out, they meet this exotic, good-looking guy. During the first month, he was the new flavor that all the singles friends on the group were trying out, which leads to girls taking and sharing experiences. Eventually this guy that was having his way with all the girls around him set his eyes on Fran and begun to flirt with her, taking her to the dance floor, having fun. Well, here is when she shouldered 2 things because we had an agreement with dang night that she would stay away from any guy because we guys are pigs, and it's pretty rare that a guy just want to dance anyway. Because of the excitement, she went for it, enjoyed the attention of this guy, and had a great time dancing. Looking at the timeline, this was around the time I noticed that Fran was distant. Moving forward a few weeks, her friends were sharing more intimate stories about this guy, and it got into her mind. She found herself fantasizing doing it with him. Also, he was trying to make a move on her too. But from what she told me, she didn't went for it because she was with me. Drinks and drunken friends are bad counselors, and once the idea of open the relationship came out, they were over 2 weeks chatting about how to convince me that because long time ago I had threesomes and also swinged a little, I should be okay with the idea of open the relationship. But toms and swinging are things you do as a couple and out of the pure excitement, at least for me, and was a long time ago, early 20s. All this lead to the day she asked to open the relationship. She told me that she and her friends never thought that I would end the relationship in the moment, that the worst scenario would be me acting angry and say no, so there is no big deal and just ask. At this point, I interrupt her and tell her that she should know better. We were together over 2 years and always share my tea about everything with her. She agrees. At this point, I explained to her that I didn't break up with her for the question. I did it because there was already a guy, so for me that was a major trust issue. If this was some concern that came out natural, maybe we could have worked it out. In the worst scenario, maybe we could found it an alternative, but the way things was an alert for me. We went around to the topic for a while, and then I began to question her. Basically, I asked if she was intimate with him at some point. She said she wasn't. If she developed some feelings for him? No, she didn't. And lastly, if she has seen this guy again, and that was also a no. Even if that is not much, that was a small relief, but I explained to her that I can't go back to her. I need to close this for my own health. Also, I told her that we share a lot of friends, and I don't want to lose any of them because of this and wouldn't be fair to ask them to choose. So we can behave like adults and keep things friendly. If my friends take one side is because they want it, not because I ask them to. She said how sorry she is, that if she could, would undo everything. But she knew it can't be done. She was about to cry. I was also too, so it was a good moment to ask for the check and leave. I walked her to her car, opened the door for her just in habit of mine, and she started to cry. Couldn't help and hug her. We stood there about 10 minutes. When she calmed, she got into her car and drove. Went home, grabbed my camping gear, and drove to the mount and spent it all the weekend there to clear my mind. Early this morning, I was driving back to the city, and at the moment my phone grabbed signal, it got flooded with messages from friends and family, all worried because basically I disappeared without telling anybody. I text back to everyone telling that I was okay, that went out camping, and at the moment was driving to work. Also, I got a text from her, something on the lines that she feels that we are not over yet and that she thinks I need time to leave all this behind me, and she will wait in the hope of it. I haven't texted her back because I'm pretty sure I'm done, but experience has taught me to never say never, so for now I'm going to take easy, doing what I like, and see where things take me. Well, that's it. Thanks all for your support and advice. P.S. Sorry about my English. Update 3. How are things going for me? Hello, it's been a while. The truth is, I didn't plan to continue updating the story, but a few days ago, a friend sent me a TikTok link where the story was, but now in Spanish. The translation was horrible, so I got some smiles at it and realized that I hadn't logged into Reddit in a while, so I decided to do it. Yesterday, I came across several messages, some asking what I was up to, others giving advice and encouragement, and of course, those asking for an update. I decided that it would be easier to write here than to respond individually to each of you. Well, here it goes. After almost a month and a half revolving around the matter, I still didn't have things very clear, but fortunately, that's what best friends are for. I had a conversation with CLA and her husband, Pete, my two best friends. CLA is like my little sister, and Pete is my best friend since college. After a while talking, CLA put on her serious face. That's strange, he's always smiling, and told me, you have to let her go. You know very well that in your head, you will always be wondering what happened and if you are really all that she wants, and regardless of whether that's the case, you'll never be sure. She also said something about how the only reason I haven't let her go is because I don't want to be alone. To be very honest, all of that is true. It was hard to hear it, especially because it came from the woman who I still see as that little girl I took by the hand to school. And for some reason, I couldn't stop wondering when she became more mature and wiser than me. Funny note, I jokingly asked her when she had matured more than me. She laughed and told me that I stopped maturing at 15 and that she had caught up with me when she turned 10. We have 5 years difference. Anyway, back to the story, I gave the situation a couple more thoughts that week and went to talk to Fran. I just told her that clearly at this moment in life we wanted different things and that it was better for each of us to continue on our own way without resentments or bad feelings, and I said goodbye. Clearly, she didn't like what I said and she got sad, but well, she has to process her emotions and I have to process mine. I was in an emotional low for a while, and I focused on work, but things have slowly improved. No, I'm not seeing anyone, and I have no intentions anytime soon. I think it's a good opportunity to behave like an immature 15-year-old in the body of a 43-year-old and play video games, go camping, and be the envy of every one of my friends whose wives or partners don't let them go out to play XD. And that's it. Thank you for your interest in my story, your advice, and good wishes. P.S. Like always, sorry about my English. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Girlfriend cheated on me during COVID and asked for an open relationship, so I agreed and got revenge by dating other girls, then kicked her out and burned everything related to her. Hi there. I'm here just to get this out. I've been going through therapy for what's happened to me over the last few years, and I've been told that writing out my feelings will help. So here I am. I started dating my first real girlfriend during COVID in 2020. I'll call her Sonia. We actually met at the grocery store because I held the door open for her. It was a small act of kindness, but it led to a brief conversation about the challenges of grocery shopping during the pandemic, and not even challenges of grocery shopping, but just life in general, as most of know. Her smile was warm, and her eyes sparkled with a kind of light that made the gray, stressful atmosphere of that time feel a little brighter. I say real because it really was my first serious relationship. Back in 2020, I was a young sprout of 23. Sonia was a couple of years older than me and working as a nurse. Her dedication and passion for her job were evident from the start, and it was one of the things I admired most about her. Despite the chaos of the pandemic, she always found time to listen to my worries and offer comfort. Her empathy and strength were like a rock I could cling to amidst the storm. It was honestly one of the worst times, but she made life feel good and bright, if that makes sense. We both weren't alone, we had each other. We watched each other hit rock bottom, me losing a job, her dealing with work at the time, but we hit each other. She had this infectious enthusiasm for life that drew me in. Whether we were talking about our favorite books, sharing music, or just walking in the park, she made everything feel special. I fell in love with her kindness, her intelligence, and the way she could make even the most mundane moments feel magical. She had a quirky sense of humor that never failed to make me laugh, even on my worst days. She had this incredible ability to make me feel seen and understood in a way no one else ever had. And here I am today, still trying to process everything that happened between us and where things went wrong. Comes in waves. Writing this down is supposed to help, and maybe it will. At the very least, it's a chance to remember the good times and honor what we had. So it sort of started right before our year anniversary. She came home from work one night, and I had this awful gut feeling that I've never felt before. The energy between us was all off. She was supposed to come over after work, but tried to bail. She had come from work totally exhausted before and had bailed on me other days because of the hard days at the hospital, which I totally understood, but that day just felt different. Normally, when Sonia was too tired to see me, she'd still call or text with her usual warmth, apologizing and promising to make it up to me. But that evening her messages were short, almost cold. And when I insisted on seeing her, she reluctantly agreed and had sort of been like that the entire week. When she arrived, she looked more than just tired. She seemed distant, like her mind was a million miles away, and she wasn't telling me something. Her usual smile was missing, replaced by a forced, almost robotic expression. We sat down for dinner that I had made for us, but the conversation was strained. Sonia barely spoke. I tried to lighten the mood, bringing up our favorite inside jokes and shared memories, but nothing seemed to reach her. As the night wore on, my anxiety grew. I kept asking myself if I had done something wrong or if something had happened at work, until I couldn't take it anymore and gently confronted her, asking if everything was okay. She sighed deeply, avoiding my gaze, and told me she was just really tired and stressed from work, but her words felt hollow and lacked sincerity. For the first time in our relationship, I felt a pang of insecurity, wondering if there was something she wasn't telling me. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Was she unhappy with me? Was there someone else? The uncertainty gnawed at me, and I struggled to push those thoughts aside, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. That night, as we lay in bed, the distance between us felt like an insurmountable chasm. She fell asleep quickly, but I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. I can't really explain the feeling. Felt more intuitive than anything. I'm sure some of you have experienced this before. I know it was probably wrong to go through her phone, but I honestly had to know. Even if nothing was really wrong, I had to just squash it. I'm ashamed to admit that I went through her phone. I stumbled upon a thread of messages with a name I didn't recognize. My heart sank as I read through them. I don't know what I initially thought I would find, but a part of me really hoped that I wouldn't come across anything like that. There were flirty texts, late-night conversations, and multiple plans to meet up. My worst fears were being confirmed right before my eyes. As I dug deeper, I found more messages with other men, revealing that she had been cheating on me for what seemed like our entire relationship. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. The woman I loved, the one I thought I knew so well, had been living a double life. Every memory we had together now felt tainted, every moment of happiness a cruel joke. I felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak all at once. I couldn't breathe, my chest tightening as I tried to process the enormity of what I had discovered. I called my brother in tears. In the morning, I confronted her, and I was instantly met with crocodile tears, "I'm sorry," and manipulation by threatening self-harm. She played the victim card hard, and me, being young and dumb, fell for it. Eventually, I caved. She brought up this idea of having an open relationship. I wasn't ready to let her go just yet. I blamed myself and apologized for not being good enough for her to want to stay with one man. At the time, she let me take the fall. I told her I'd be a better man. I tried the open relationship thing, but I didn't meet with any other women. It was mostly just her speaking to guys and claiming that she wasn't speaking to the same guy that she had been cheating on me with. There were times that she wanted to bring a third person into the bedroom with us, and in fear of her leaving me, I agreed, but the kicker is, she didn't want it to be a female. She only wanted male third parties. Like a fool, I agreed. It was about 6 months of that, and I asked her to move in with me because I couldn't trust her. We spoke about getting married and starting a poly relationship. I had entertained it for a little bit, but I thought that by living together, I might be able to control something in our relationship, but I quickly realized it was a naive hope. She started asking if other people could move in with us, pushing the boundaries even further. I resisted. I didn't want our home to become a revolving door of strangers. Despite my attempts to set limits, I felt increasingly powerless in my own relationship. She starts having SS with her other partners and turns me down more and more. We have very little sex. Another year passed of this twisted arrangement, and finally something shifted in me. I got angry and started resenting her. I became really bitter and cold. I couldn't believe that this woman I loved had hurt me so badly. The pain and betrayal festered inside me until it transformed into a dark desire for revenge. I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. I went out and met women, bringing them home and asking Sonia if we could have threesomes. She got mad at me for even asking, which was the height of hypocrisy considering what she had put me through. I made sure she saw the flirtatious texts and provocative pictures on my phone. I'd come home late, smelling of perfume, and wouldn't offer any explanations. I wouldn't tell her who I was with, even though it had been one of our rules. I wanted her to feel the same paranoia and heartbreak I had endured for so long. Seeing her anger felt like a twisted vindication, but it didn't bring the satisfaction I had hoped for. Instead, it just deepened my sense of loss and disillusionment. The woman I had once loved and admired had become a source of pain and resentment. The relationship that had once brought me so much joy was now a toxic cycle of betrayal and retaliation. The whole thing was really ruining every aspect of my life. I hardly saw my family anymore because I was ashamed. When I did see them, they complained that they didn't even know who I was anymore. My brother mentioned how unhappy and sad I looked. Finally, one day in 2023, I woke up and wondered to myself, what the hell am I doing? Who even am I? I didn't recognize the person I had become. Sonia and I were now basically just roommates. We weren't sleeping in the same bed anymore. Our paths hardly crossed. One of these women that I had started seeing in attempts to make Sonia jealous was actually falling in love with me, but I was just trying to keep it purely physical. I didn't want to hurt people like Sonia was hurting me, so I broke it off. At this point, I told Sonia that I couldn't do this anymore, and I'm just wasting my life away with this soul sucker who cheats on me right in front of my eyes. I asked her to move out, which wasn't easy. At first, she straight up refused to accept it. She said she wasn't moving out, and I said if she wasn't leaving, that I was going to pack up her stuff for her and leave it all on the lawn. She told me that I was throwing everything away. She said that I couldn't just kick her out because it was our place, and I said that it was actually my place, and she's being the worst roommate I've ever had. Then the floodgates opened, and I told her that she was an evil person who just wanted to hurt me, and I've been a dead man walking since I first discovered she cheated on me. She told me I was being dramatic, and she said that this whole life takes two people. She said that I knew what I was getting into the moment I agreed to the open relationship. She said that I could have said no at any moment, and then she called me a weak little boy, and she told me that I was a quitter and I'm just giving up. And I said that she was the one that gave up the moment she decided to cheat on me and continue to cheat on me. I said that I tried to make it work, and the argument escalated from there. She accused of being selfish and unreasonable, of abandoning our relationship without trying hard enough to fix it. I countered by listing all the ways she had hurt me, the countless nights I spent agonizing over her betrayals, the times I had swallowed my pride and pain to keep us together. From there, I just started picking up her stuff and carrying it out onto the lawn, even the tiniest of things that I knew she had bought, like planters' pots and bottles of wine. Anything that was hers, I just wanted out of there. She started yelling at me and pushing me. At one point, she tried to be physical with me, and I had to lock her out of the house. She had called one of her partners, and then it only escalated from there. The police got involved. Basically, her partner and I got physical. I was defending myself and I bled all over my front porch. I ended up charging him and he spent a few nights in jail. Sonia tried to come back the next day and was sobbing and trying to apologize. She asked me where she was supposed to go, and I told her that she can go to any of the other partners that she has, or friends or family. I straight up told her that I was done. She was hysterical. I told her that I can't keep living like this. She continued to resist, making every excuse to delay the inevitable. She played on my emotions, reminding me of the good times, the plans we had made for the future. I told her she had to pack her stuff, and I didn't want to see her again. I said I'd help her pack up her stuff and load it up into a vehicle, and that it had to be out by the end of the day. The reality of the situation began to sink in for her. After hours of back and forth and tears and vomit, yes, she puked from hyperventilating, she finally caved, though it was clear she was far from accepting it. As I was moving stuff outside, she said, "I hope you know what you're doing," and I told that it was something I should have done a long time ago. My brother and his wife ended up coming over and helping, and just for moral support, and I appreciate the hell out of them for that. As she drove away for the last time, I felt a tumult of emotions. There was relief in reclaiming my space and my life, but also a profound sadness for the love that had been lost and the future that would never be. After that, I blocked her on my phone and over socials, and it may be dramatic, but I burned whatever she had left. Practically anything that would remind me of her was gone. This first real relationship turned out to be a painful experience, one that shattered my naive expectations of love. The betrayal and heartache taught me more about myself and the complexities of relationships than I could have ever imagined. It was a bad first relationship, no doubt about it. I learned the hard way about the importance of trust, communication, and self-respect. Despite the pain, it also taught me to recognize my own worth and the necessity of setting boundaries. It showed me that true love shouldn't come at the cost of my own happiness and well-being. In the end, this experience shaped me. It made me more aware of what I need and deserve in a relationship. It was a harsh lesson, but one that ultimately made me stronger and more prepared for future relationships. If it's any consolation, I heard from one of our friends that Sonia had been let go from her role at the hospital because she had been severely underperforming. Some of her colleagues had been complaining about her. I guess I wasn't the only one who had issues with her and trusting her. Apparently, she had been stealing medication for some of her partners and not filling out patient charts properly. Last I heard, hospital administrators are reportedly conducting an internal investigation to assess the impact of Sonia's conduct on patient care and workplace dynamics. Anyways, thanks for reading this. If I can offer any advice after all of this, it's if something feels off in your relationship, don't ignore it. Trust your gut instincts and address any concerns you have with your partner. Don't settle for less than you deserve. You deserve to be with someone who respects and values you, who is faithful and committed to building a healthy, loving relationship. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, a relationship may not be healthy or fulfilling. Don't be afraid to walk away if it's no longer serving you or bringing you happiness. Remember, it's okay to prioritize your own happiness and well-being. Now on to the next story. Story 12. Sister chose wedding venue my husband's wheelchair can't access and called him a cripple at Mother's Day lunch. So I'm cutting her off, but my parents are blaming my pregnancy hormones. I, F36, have been married to my husband, Brett, M40, for the last 6 years. I have a daughter, F10, from a previous relationship. We were engaged when he abandoned me when I was pregnant to be with his coworker and eventually disappeared. Brad loves and adores my daughter, and my daughter loves him so much. I'm currently pregnant with our first baby, my second baby. Brad is a paraplegic. He was in a car accident when he was 21. He has since his accident went back to school and currently works as a university professor. He is super independent and possibly the best man I could ever married. My sister is getting married, and today she announced that the venue she picked is a heritage building. I told her then it won't be wheelchair accessible. She rolled her eyes and said, "The world doesn't revolve around Brad. It's not his day, it's mine." I said, "I understand, but I'm not leaving him behind." Then she started screaming that I'm trying to steal attention because everyone will ask where his bride's sister is. Her fiancé suggested having the ceremony at the Heritage Building but have the reception at another venue. That way Brad can join us. My sister said no. I talked to Brad. He thinks I should go, and he and my daughter can have a daddy/daughter date and he will take care of her. It's a child-free wedding, and we were initially going to ask Brad's mom to watch my daughter. He thinks it's not a big deal, and I should just go and enjoy the wedding. I feel very bad and don't want to go. But my sister will be so upset if I don't go to my sister's wedding because she is excluding my husband. Comments where OP replied. Comment 1. Do what feels right to you. I can see you love your husband very much, and you have every right to be mad that your sister wants to exclude him. And seriously, how hard is it to rent a temporary ramp to be put in place so he can go? But since I don't know the stair situation, I can give a pass about that. But there are options. OP. It's an old heritage building with lots of stairs, unfortunately. I feel really bad for my husband TBH. Comment 2. I like the idea of the dad and daughter day. Are you in the wedding party? How does the heritage building get away with skirting ADA laws? Your sister is awful, and at least the fiancé is empathetic. Don't be surprised if there is no wedding. OP. I'm not in the wedding party. Sadly, it's 2024, and we still don't have something like ADA in Canada. Since it's a heritage building, they don't care about accessibility. Yes, my husband once a month has a daddy/daughter date. They go to different restaurants each time and do any activity she chooses. Comment 3. As a mom of a differently abled daughter, I have to say, number 1, your sister didn't turn overnight. She's been enabled in her behavior her whole life. Your parents should be ashamed. Your hub sounds awesome though. You don't have to ask permission to turn your back on a dumpster fire. Point out it's on fire, and the privileged of you, your husband, and their grandbaby's presence will be restored when the fire is out, and then leave. OP. My parents pay for my sister's big wedding. They did pay for my at-home reception when we eloped as well. They invited everyone, about 14 people, to a restaurant. I talked to them. They said they do love Brad, but it's my sister's day, and they can't force her to change her mind. Yes, I'm disappointed at them. I just don't understand how you can claim you respect someone, yet tell them to stay home. You are not welcome. My husband is used to not being included, so he is okay. I just can't get over it. Comment 4, NTA. It's well within her rights to have her wedding wherever she wants. It's also within your rights to decline her invitation because you don't want to exclude your husband. That her fiancé was willing to change venues for the reception, but she refused, is what makes her the A. If she cared about your attendance, that would be a great way of having the best of both worlds. Comment 5, it's also crazy that she'd treat Brad like he had attention-seeking behavior when he's in a freaking wheelchair. I'm glad he wasn't offended and upset by it, but if he was my partner and my sister was acting like this, I'd be furious, especially since you've been married 6 years. It's not like it's a new relationship. She's more concerned about how Opie not showing up looks versus how horrible it looks that she excluded her brother-in-law by choosing a site knowing he can't attend. There's no fixing that kind of ugly. Comment 6. Wait, so I am not supposed to use my wheelchair for attention? Damn, I bought a red one on purpose. People mostly ignore wheelchair users like we don't exist. However, the attention we do get is so much fun. Random strangers asking you for your medical history, demanding to know if you actually need the chair, insisting you do need help, assuming that because your body is broken, your brain is as well. Comment 7. That said, all places used for function should be wheelchair accessible. If a lot of the medieval buildings in my city can be made accessible, then so can whatever heritage venue this is. A ramp, lift, SL elevator if required, and an accessible loo is often enough. Up NTA, your sister, however. Update. Thank you everyone for your kind words and advice. This Mother's Day today, and of course, my husband and my daughter decided to spoil me rotten. Smile. We went for Mother's Day lunch to my parents. My sister and her fiancé, Bob, his name is Bobik, he is Iranian, but everyone calls him Bob, came too. Brad, Bob, and my dad were in the backyard, king and chatting. My mom and my sister were in the kitchen talking. My sister went on and on about her wedding plans. I asked her if there is any possibility that she would consider Bob's suggestion. She can have her civil ceremony, Iranian ceremony, and all her pictures done in her dream venue, then have the reception, which is just dinner, dance, and cake somewhere else. I told her it means a lot to me if she makes this accommodation for Brad. My sister lost it, started screaming that I have always been jealous of her and now trying to ruin her dream wedding. She said I'm jealous because I never had a big wedding and had to elope because I had a kid out of wedlock. I didn't have to. It was our decision to have a stress-free allotment. She also said it was my choice to marry a cripple guy, so why should her wedding plans have to change? My mom told her to stop, but she kept on going. I told her then I'm not coming. I told Brad and my daughter that we were leaving. I couldn't stay there anymore. Her entitlement sickens me. Now my parents are mad at me for even suggesting because your sister is under stress. My dad thinks I acted immature by leaving, and mom says I overreacted because I'm pregnant and hormonal. I'm so disappointed at my parents too for not standing up to my sister. My plan is to go and see with my sister. I don't even know who she is anymore, so no happy update. I just cut my sister out of my life and will not be going to her wedding. Sorry for typos, I'm very emotional right now. Now for some comments. Comment 1, save Bob. Your sister is a jerk, and your parents enable and excuse her tantrums. I'd put sister on NC and parents on LC. Miguel Hufflepuff. I hope this is a wake-up call for Bob. Given life happens, I wouldn't want to be married to someone who is shitty to disabled people's needs. As disability SL, more disabilities can happen at any time. Comment 2. Bob should ask her what would happen if he became paraplegic. Save Bob. Comment 3. Let them be mad. Their loss. Your sister has shown exactly who she is. Bubby, hopefully your parents will come to their senses and understand why you're not going. Comment 4. Wow, insult your husband, calls him a cripple, take shots at both you and your child for the child being born out of wedlock, and then your parents have the audacity to tell you you're overreacting because you left? What? How the hell does someone even have that much audacity? And this is coming from me, someone who admittedly at times has weighed too much audacity. Comment 5. How incredibly sad. Sister is a real bridezilla. Comment 6. OP's sister is being crazy. But her reaction aside, am I the only who agrees moving the entire venue because of a single person is also asking a bit much? Sister is being a bridezilla, but she does sort of have bigger fish to fry than Brad right now. I feel both sides of the situation jump to extremes fairly quickly. I admit I'm not well versed in the logistics of handicap accessibility to old buildings, but there has to be some sort of middle ground here. They can install strategic ramps, and sure, Brad won't be able to go everywhere in the building, but there has to be a way to make it work for a few hours. Comment 7. My reading of this is that the building is not at all accessible. Also, accessibility isn't just ramps. It is things like doors being wide enough, disabled toilets, and so on. Brad is being excluded from the wedding because of his disability. It is as simple as that. I'm disabled, and when friends of mine have got married, they were looking at venues and decided on them because of the accessibility so I could be a part of it. I've even had friends who, when moving home, part of their decision process is whether or not I can get in. As someone who got married not that long ago, I know how stressful they can be to plan, but you make sure that the people that are going to be there, the people you love and care about most in the world, are going to be there, going to be comfortable, and going to have a good time. Comment 8. NTA. Calling your spouse a cripple and implying your daughter is a bastard. What century is she channeling? Sheesh. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.